This is a pivotal moment in American history, and what happens now will determine the lives of our kids and future generations.
True. I'm terrified of there not being enough jobs for people to have meaning in their life moving forward. Like, is my kid gonna have a job?
3 Wall Street investment firms are the major stockholders of 95% of American corporations.
Isn't that some form of a monopoly? Wait a minute, guys, is the government failing us?
Who do you think owns these corporations?
Be careful with that question, because some people in Rogan's audience might give you an answer that's not savory.
Right now, anybody stands up and say, well, I disagree with President Trump. Bam, you are finished.
It's true. Like, the Republican Party right now is psychotic. Donald Trump has ruined the Republican Party. And if you don't go along with whatever his narrative is, you get completely terminated.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ford, because this country is more than just your profits. We are human beings, and you're not going to throw people out on the street.
No, I say let them throw people out. Yeah, you want to throw people out. We're going to tax the out of technology.
I worry very much about the future of American democracy.
Are you going to run for president again?
All right, guys, let's just get this in. Let's get into this. I'm curious about this. It's Bernie Sanders on Joe Rogan. I'm just interested in what's going on here. I saw a couple of clips, so I'm interested. And somebody put in the Discord, I think. So let's go. We should also turn it up.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan.
What do you guys think?
Podcast by night, all day. Mr. Sanders, great to see you.
Good to be with you, Joe.
It's an interesting intro.
Great to be. You've got a bunch of notes.
Not all that much.
Have you prepared for this?
I feel like you should prepare for it. I think Joe Rogan is one of the most influential podcasts that you could really be on.
I am all prepared.
Especially politically.
Well, it's a good time for you to be in here because the world's gone haywire.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a little crazy.
What do you
I feel like the world's healing a little bit. I feel like things are getting a little less crazy. Trump made things a little more crazy. Things are getting a little less crazy. I think people are trying to be like, oh, Trump's a little crazy. Same thing happened when he first got elected. Everybody was like, oh my God, I love Trump. And then he came in and he kind of he was a little bit of a, he was just a little bit ineffective. So people voted very heavily Democrat in the midterms, and that was pretty much it.
Thoughts on this?
I think I start off with Joe trying to take a deep breath and doing what is not often done. Where are we as a country today? What's going well? What's not going well? And I don't think we don't have that kind of basic discussion. And to my mind, I think in America today we're facing more serious crises than we have in the modern history of our country. This is a pivotal moment in American history, and what happens now will determine the lives of our kids and future generations.
I mean, that's true. Yeah, sure.
What specifically concerns you?
I'll tell you what concerns me.
Bro, let me just really, all noise aside, what concerns me is how we're going to integrate technology into our workforce and stuff. And I'm terrified of there not being enough jobs for people to have meaning in their life moving forward in a very serious capacity. So I'm kind of worried about that. I think we don't talk about that enough at all, because I don't is my kid going to have a fucking job? It's I don't know. I don't know if my kid's going to have a fucking job. I don't know if there's going to be any jobs left to have.
Concerns me, the issue of wealth and power. All right, I'm kind of old-fashioned, and I believe in democracy. And I believe that everybody should have a good shot at living a decent life. And what I worry about right now, and this is an issue, Joe, and it's part of the problem, that it just ain't talked about very much. And I applaud, by the way, you and the other podcasters who give people the time to really seriously discuss things rather than 7-second sound bites, But if you take a look at where we are...
I guess that's one thing you could say for Joe Rogan that you can't really say about a lot of other people, is that he doesn't do sound bite spam. There's other podcasters who, or YouTubers or whatever, that'll really just try to operate, who really just try to operate in those clippable moments. So, that is a fair point.
As a nation today, the system is not working. It's broken.
True.
It ain't working for ordinary human beings. So you have in America today where we have more income and wealth inequality than we've ever had in the history of this country. That's just a fact. You have one man, Mr. Musk, owning more wealth than the bottom 52% of American families.
Crazy. I'm assuming he's singling out Elon Musk because he's attached to Trump and he's a popular billionaire.
Man, 52% of the American families. You got the top 1% owning more wealth.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Bernie Sanders, he doesn't do his hair. He doesn't make himself look nice. And that, I think, makes some people trust him more because he's he's just rolled out of bed. He looks like a normal dude. He didn't spend hours in makeup, But I got to be honest with you, that fucking hairstyle is crazy.
The bottom 93%, you got CEOs of large corporations making 350 times what their workers make. And meanwhile, in this richest
crazy
country in the history of the world.
Listen, I believe rich people are fine to exist, but I mean, how much... It's crazy. It's crazy how much you can make, which is lack of regulation. And people will be like, well, it's their hard-earned money. It's like, yeah, I understand that. I understand it's like if their hard-earned money, and I'm sure that some of them work hard, but like also poor people, and a lot of them work hard too. So it's like, God forbid we take some of that money through taxes to pay workers better. I mean, billionaires and business owners, they benefit from taxes. They benefit from our law structure. They can go bankrupt, and like there's a protection in going bankrupt in America. We bail them out if everything tanks. We bailed the fuck out of the banks. Like they're protected in many ways. Their industries are protected in many ways. They get educated workers from taxes. They get protection from hospitals, police, fire departments. There's roads, bridges. So why not pay into that more?
Working class people are getting decimated. Today, and again, we don't talk about it in Congress for reasons that I hope I can get into.
Yeah.
We don't talk about it in the corporate media. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck.
That's crazy.
Now, I grew up in a family. I don't know your background, but I grew up in a family, lived paycheck to paycheck. And anyone who lives paycheck to paycheck understands that every single day is a struggle. You got to figure out how you feed the kids, rents, cost of housing in America off the charts, healthcare off.
That's what I'd say. Healthcare and housing are crazy. It's one of those things where we should increase the amount of money people make, but I feel like we don't even necessarily need to worry about how much money people make. We need to worry about how expensive housing and healthcare is. If we can get the cost down of housing and healthcare by like a decent amount, that would solve a tremendous amount of problems. Like you need housing and you need healthcare. So then all of a sudden it's like, hey, my housing and healthcare went down by 10%. I now have like $500 more per month to spend, instead of having to necessarily get paid more. I'm not saying we shouldn't pay people more. I'm just saying like something's got to give.
The charts. So right now, as we talk, there are people worrying. My landlord, is going to raise my rent by 20%. What the hell do I do? Where do I go? What schools do my kid go to? How do I buy decent food for my kids? My mother is ill. How do I afford prescription drugs for my mother? My car breaks down. So if you have money, no one thinks of it. Your car breaks down. Go to the mechanic. You got it fixed. You know what? A lot of people don't have $1,000 in the bank right now.
Yeah,
if you don't have $1,000, your car breaks down. How do you get to work? If you don't get to work, you get fired. If you get fired, your whole life is disrupted. 60% of Americans.
It's true. Your life, a lot of your life gets disrupted. That's why. I mean, it's so funny because things like universal health care is such a pro-business move. It's a pro-small business move. It's like, oh, if we had universal health care, then better workers would be more willing to do lower-paying jobs because they would have their health care covered. It's you could really sell it as like a business, like a pro-business stance.
How much different is that than past generations?
We've always had rich and poor, no question about it. It's worse now, Joe.
What do you attribute that to?
I attribute it to decades-old attacks on the working class of this country. I attribute it to horrific trade agreements, which have allowed corporate America to throw millions of workers out on the street and move to China, Mexico, and other low-wage countries.
True. I mean, we're at a point now, though, where even if those factories came back, they would be so heavily automated that it's like, what do we do moving forward? I think a negative income tax would be great, honestly. I think that we should try to move towards like no income tax for people under $50,000 a year, and then even move towards like a negative income tax. But we could start with like no income tax on people making less than $50,000 a year by taxing, billionaires more effectively. But it's such a shame that there are so many people in America that the second that you're like, hey, I think we should tax billionaires more in some capacity, we should tax their capital gains or figure something out, because they pay themselves like no money because they don't need it when they're businesses, and then they just kind of use their assets as leverage to buy things and kind of avoid taxes in some way. People are like, oh, but they'll just leave the country or they'll leave the state. All these rich people are flocking to rich states where they pay more taxes. Clearly, they appreciate the amenities that come with a high tax state. So I don't think that they're going to leave the state. And where else are they going to go? All of our allies that have, first world allies have like better tax structures. So where are they going to go? They're not going to go anywhere. There's nowhere for them to go. They get to cry about it, but they'll get over it almost instantly. They don't really care. Like, we're talking about billionaires who will give like $500,000 to like different campaigns, but they're unwilling to pay an extra $50,000 a year in taxes. It's like, what the fuck? It doesn't make any sense.
They attribute it to a corrupt political system in which billionaires have significant control over both political parties.
That's true. That's why we need like you need a ranked choice voting system. I genuinely believe that. Like we should have 3 or 5 parties in America where the ranked choice voting, where you rank like your top 5s in a certain order, and then like the best person that gets the best points wins. Maybe it's everybody's second pick, but maybe that's better. I mean, you need more competition. You can't just do 2 fucking parties.
So that, for example, right now in Washington, the national minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. So you got millions of workers today, making 10, 12, 13 bucks an hour. You tell me, how do people survive on 13 bucks an hour? When we were kids, or at least when I was a kid, you worked for a large company. You had something called a defined benefit pension plan. That means you work for me for 30 years. When you retire, you're going to get X hundreds of dollars a week. That's long gone. Corporations have gotten rid of that. So you got something.
Yeah, my mom had a pension, or has a pension, and then like she was in the transition period where they phased the pension now, so she still had the pension, but then they're also like no longer contributing to it, and then they did like a 401k.
Like half of older workers in America have nothing in the bank when they face retirement. So I think, to answer your question, I think you got a rigged system controlled economically and politically by very, very wealthy and powerful people who could care less for working families. Now, I don't want to romanticize the old days because that would not be true. But there used to be a kind of a culture. If I was a boss and I ran a factory, I had a little bit of concern for you, right?
Right.
In general, I would say, I know your wife, how's your mom doing?
Well, that's probably true. I feel like first generation rich people are probably super nice. Like when you are in a family that's middle class, and then you end up, between luck and skill, becoming very rich and successful, you earn it yourself and you build it yourself with the help of like your parents setting you up school wise. I feel like you're probably a pretty good person. That's like, oh, like I want to get back. I still remember what it's like to kind of struggle and be in a shitty position. But then when you're like a second, third, fourth generation millionaire, like you don't have any relatability to the real world, and so you just care less about people because you're born into wealth. You probably think less of other people. You probably don't even think of them as human on the same level as you. You probably think that they're worthless. You focus on all the negatives, and you justify why it doesn't matter if they have any resources because they're useless anyway to you. So, I could see that being a real thing.
And all that stuff, that's gone. You got these companies that are owned by other companies that are owned by supranationals. We got involved in my office. Like we used to be the chairman of the labor committee, health, education, labor. So I got involved in a lot of stuff. And when workers were out on strike, we would call up and see what was going on, see how we can help. So we'd call up to the company and we'd say, why are you cutting back on health care for your workers? Well, we don't make that decision. It's owned by somebody else. Call up somebody else. Well, we're owned by somebody. You know how it is. It's just these huge conglomerates own the bloody world. And these guys don't give a damn about the needs of working people. So I would say
probably not,
that the economy becomes less and less personal. I have no, you're my worker. I have no care about you because right now I'm owned by an international who doesn't know that you exist.
And there's also a diffusion of responsibility.
Absolutely.
It's not even in your hands.
It's unfortunate too, because like you'd think you'd want your worker to be happy so that they would be a good worker. So that they would come in, they would appreciate what's going on, they would try to share in your vision, they would be happier, they would be healthier. You'd think that you'd have a vested interest in treating your workers well because of those things.
Exactly. So the local boss might say, hey, listen, I'm really sorry, but I didn't have any decision in here.
Right. There's nothing I can do.
Nothing I can do. So I add all of that up, and you have, and then just look at other things. I mean, tell me about the healthcare system. Does anybody in America think this healthcare system is working?
No, not really. I just went to the doctor, got my Manjaro. It was costing me $350. And I could afford it. I'm a person that probably should be paying more taxes, frankly. I'm not rich, but like I do well enough. But I couldn't imagine if you were like fucking poor. Imagine you were poor and like you were diabetic and you needed Manjaro or something. Like that's fucked. It's so goddamn expensive. I think Ozempic is like 10 times more expensive in America than it is in Denmark or something. Why? For what reason other than to try to like drain wealth from fucking poor people already? It's ridiculous.
Well, you could tell by the assassination.
I mean, although it kind of makes sense. Like people always talk about like the pharmaceutical company making drugs that like make you unhealthy. I don't think that that's true. I think that's a conspiracy. But like I do think that constantly extracting financial resources from people and stressing them out is absolutely some kind of tactic to make you eat like shit and be unhealthy mentally, which translates to unhealthy physically, and you have less time on your hands and you eat worse and you're like unhealthy as fuck. Like there's just so many different things. Like that's why people are so dependent onto medications. It's because like everything around them is so unhealthy. Everything. I mean, even even like fast food organizations, it's their whole job to create commercials that are psychologically manipulative. Like there's a whole psychology behind marketing. I watched this video on how KFC sold their French fries. They increased their French fry sales by 58% in like Australia because of psychological tactics, like making you like, I can't even explain it to you. Like that's all these different businesses. That's their goal. It's crazy.
The assassination of the United Healthcare guy, when that happened, there was people celebrating. When is there?
I frankly did not give a fuck that a healthcare CEO got shot and killed. It shouldn't be happening, but I don't really care. I think people need to start understanding that like healthcare CEOs, these people are murdering people, and they're not actually murdering people, but they're the cause of death for how many millions of Americans. If it's your job to maximize your profit when it comes to your healthcare industry in a way that denies coverage of other people, your job is to let people die of healthcare, even though they pay for their healthcare. Your job is to try to deny them as much as possible and let them die. And so I'm not really super concerned when a healthcare CEO gets shot. Again, it's not good, but I'm also like, we have to stop doing like 10 degrees of separation. That's fucking crazy. It's your job to try to put in place policies to make people insured for a lot of money and then figure out ways to like not let them necessarily optimize their coverage. It's pretty fucked up. You're going to be in a serious industry like that. I mean, okay. That's crazy.
Ever someone gets assassinated on the streets of New York City and people celebrate.
Right. That's terrible. It's terrible, but it does speak to how people feel about insurance companies.
Right. Sure. Well, and I think rightly so, because it's not what you're paying for. What you're paying for is you're hoping that
I have to spend I think it's $8,000 or $9,000 a year between my premium. No, it's $15,000 between my premium and deductible. My deductible is like I think about $9,000 a year, so my insurance doesn't kick in until I spend $9,000. So I'm going to the doctor, and I'm spending more money per visit at the doctor because when you're insured, they increase the prices of your visit. They increase the price of your medication. You can literally go into a place and ask for the uninsured price. I was at Costco and I had a med that's $50, and she's like, if we don't run it through insurance, I charge you $38. I'm like, no, because I have to hit my deductible. So you get charged more money to have health insurance, and then you have an outrageous deductible that you have to hit before they start kicking in. So I have to spend $9,000 into my deductible before my coverage starts to kick in. So every time I go to the doctor, I'm spending, I think it's $140 every time I go to my primary care physician, because that's the insurance that we have, and we have it through my wife's company, which is a social worker company, and yet they still have absolutely horrid dog shit insurance. It's fucked up.
Ever get sick, but if you pay your insurance, you will be covered. What they're trying to do is make it as difficult as possible for you to get money from them.
You got it.
Yeah.
That's the more money, the more I can deny you, the more money I make.
Right. And that's the bottom line. And when you're dealing with these enormous corporations, like we're talking about, this diffusion of responsibility, the people that are doing it, it's like, this is what I have to do. This is my job. They don't even think about it.
Right, exactly.
And this all started when? So Michael Moore had that brilliant documentary, Roger and Me.
Yeah. I know Michael's a good friend. Yeah.
He's a great guy. That documentary is
like Bowling for Columbine, no?
Fantastic. And it shows the impact of a corporation taking all their factories, moving them away like that with no warning, no recourse, nothing anybody can do, decimates.
That
is in network doctors. Yep.
Basically all of Detroit.
That's right. People don't know this.
Yeah.
But if my memory is correct, Detroit.
I think it was. I think it's also. I want to say it's $600 a visit for when my wife and I go to the fertility clinic too. It's fucking. It's insane.
Used to be in the 50s.
Third richest city in the world.
You got it.
Yes. Yeah. We've talked about it multiple times. Yeah. It's disgusting. Right. And especially me as someone who loves American automobiles. I'm a big fan of what Detroit made during that time, and to see what happened to Detroit now. The last time I was in Detroit, it actually seems to be picking up. There's a lot of small businesses and a lot of artists and a lot of people that are proud to, like Shinola, companies like that, proud to be in Detroit. But there's just so many abandoned buildings. It's insane. You can buy a house there for $500. Right. It's really crazy. Like giant factories where every window's smashed, all the pipes have been torn out.
It's so unfortunate because nowadays we realistically really can't just bring a bunch of factory jobs back to America and just build things in America because it just wouldn't work out. It is so much cheaper in other countries. And even if it was brought back here, which isn't necessarily a bad idea, AI is going to take over, or technology is going to take it over almost immediately, like legitimately almost immediately. Factories are getting shut down because of technology, and it's like, how do we deal with a world like that? How do we work around AI? We really need to figure it out. Like, truthfully, we have to figure out how we're going to deal with AI displacing jobs, or not even just AI, just all technologies displacing jobs and driving down wages. I mean, part of that's going to be pushing our kids to go to trade jobs, which are hard to automate, and changing our economy. And that's why it's probably a good thing that we're not a goods producing economy. It's good I think 80% of our GDP comes from services. So trade jobs and like doctors and things like that. Services, so you're performing services. So that is a good thing, that we're ahead of the curve with a lot of other countries. Like, China is going to be fucked. China is going to end up being fucked because they're so centralized around the production of services. So we are ahead of the game in that. And that's why I don't think it's good to bring back a bunch of, I don't think it's necessarily a good idea to bring back a bunch of factory jobs. It'll take such a long time. And there's like so many issues with that potentially, shifting our economy so heavily, but we have to figure something out, dude.
And it's just this hulking
And it's not just
monument.
Detroit.
Right.
I mean, there are other communities, corporations say, hey. I mean,
that path is unsustainable, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, look, if we are, and again, it gets back to what we want as a nation, but you had corporations saying, hey, back then, not now, I could pay workers in China 25 cents an hour. Why the hell do I want to hire you for what was that, $5 an hour, whatever.
Right.
And I'll never forget, Joe, early on when I was elected to Congress, this was when we had the NAFTA agreement. I went to the Maquiladora area. You know what that is?
No.
It's a special zone in northern Mexico, near the border, where the government there, this is back decades ago, allowed American and other European corporations to settle and got tax breaks there. So it attracted all these corporations. So I went there with a congressional delegation, and this is what I saw. You saw these beautiful new factories. Now, this is 25, 30 years ago. And then we said, all right, I want to see where the workers live. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. Do you know those large cardboard boxes that refrigerators come into and stoves this big? That's where people were living. They were living literally in cardboard boxes, making, I think at that point, this is a long time ago, 25 cents an hour. So workers in America were thrown out on the street, and people in Mexico exploited in a horrible way, and these big, shiny new factories at the time. So what you got, and I believe this strongly, you asked me, how does it happen? Why does it happen? I think especially right now, and for many decades, you have the prevailing religion of the oligarchs and the corporate world is greed. That's all. I want it all, and I don't give a shit if I have to step all over you.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate, man. Like, again, I think that, it's that generational wealth shit, and it's all these degrees of separation, like they were saying before. If you own the business and you kind of like work at the business, or you built the business, and you used to be middle class or poor, you're gonna have so much more of an appreciation, I feel like. But now, you got fucking companies in other countries, or you got fucking like somebody who owns the company that lives like fucking 10,000 miles away from the workers, and they don't even know what they're doing. Like when's the last time you worked a job and like the person that's your boss ever worked it? Like the fucking, you think a CEO ever flipped burgers? You think a fucking McDonald's CEO ever flipped burgers for McDonald's and understands what it's like to be like a fucking, to be on the bottom ground? Do you think they know what it's like to be screamed at by some fucking douchebag piece of shit that's drunk at 3 a.m,
Or you out on the street, take away your Social Security. I want it. And to hell with you. And that's why you end up with a situation.
You also need to remove the Social Security cap. What is like 6% of your income, and it's capped at like $12,000 a year? That's fucking ridiculous. Who cares? Like, increase it. Give, why wouldn't you want a nice starting position? And you know what I really feel like? It's so funny because a lot of people will say we shouldn't have like more welfare, or we shouldn't expand things like Social Security and things like that, because people take advantage of it. And I feel like that's the way it is now. But back in the day, I don't think that that's what it was. I think back in the day, there was enough jobs around where like people were like, okay, I'm only going to be on entitlements if I feel like I need it. And nowadays, people are just on it so much. But it's because things are so hard. Like, there's such an erosion of like jobs because of, so much wealth extraction from like technology, and so much job extraction from technology, that like more and more people are on entitlements, and they're being born on entitlements because their parents can't get off of it, and they feel entitled to the entitlements. There's just so many problems.
Situation in America where, the top 1% now owns more wealth than the bottom 93%, and millions of people struggle.
It's also a corporate culture of competitiveness, right? So they're competing with all the other corporations, and you have to keep up, and there's no way other than to increase your profits every quarter.
That's right. That's right. That is exactly. You do the right thing by workers. All right, that's a perfect example. So, you got Wall Street. Here's a fact. When we talk about it's not only income and wealth inequality that bothers me, it's concentration of ownership. So right now in America, in virtually every sector of our economy, whether it's agriculture, transportation, financial services, whatever, you got a handful of giant multinationals controlling that sector. But here's another amazing fact. Who do you think owns these corporations? You remember there was a day where somebody actually
Be careful with that question, because some people in Rogan's audience might give you an answer it's not savory.
owned General Motors or owned Ford. They're now owned by Wall Street firms. You got 3 Wall Street investment firms. BlackRock, you're familiar with BlackRock. They're
Vanguard
giant.
and State Street.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Check it out on Google. They are combined, the 3 of them combined, are the major stockholders of 95% of American corporations. How's that?
That's not good.
That's power.
Right.
That's fucking insane. That should be illegal. How are they able to do that? Isn't that some form of a monopoly? Is our government failing it? Guys, is the government failing us? Wait a minute, guys, is the government failing us?
How did that start, and what could have been done to stop that from happening?
Guys.
I think it's greed. These guys are smart. They're hardworking. They're motivated. They want more and more. So if I can buy this,
they think they're better than the rest of us is really what it is. They think that they're entitled to the money that they have. That's really what it is. And the reality is that like these really rich people, they're going to see more violence committed against people who are rich or perceived as rich as time goes on, because people are getting sick of it. And it shouldn't be happening, but it's going to happen. And if they want it to stop happening, there has to be a concession. You'd think that these rich people would be smart enough to know how much they can oppress people, because you can oppress people and people are willing to take it up to a certain amount until they lose, until they lose their shit and they feel like they're better off dead than what's going on now. And once there's enough people feel like they're better off being dead than they are being financially oppressed by billionaires, they're going to start fighting back, because they're not going to feel like their lives matter enough to preserve them. And they're going to be like, fuck this. We don't have healthcare. We don't have housing. My kids aren't going to grow up and have any jobs. Nobody gives a fuck. We're fucked. So I might as well go and fight in a way that shouldn't happen. But will end up happening, and that's what's going to end up, what's going to end up happening. So you think that they would be a little bit more invested into trying to like stop all these fucked up shit from happening, because the system is going to end up being toppled because of this.
I can buy this, I can sell this.
Right, but they're all doing it within the law, right?
Yeah.
Right,
But,
which is that the problem?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course.
But who makes that law?
They do.
Now, I want to go to another issue.
Yeah.
Well, it's because the lobbying is like completely out of control. I think it's fine. People and businesses should be able to advocate for themselves, but like there's something going on with the lobbying groups that's so fucking out of control. This is an insane picture of Bernie right here.
Which is very rarely discussed. All right? You ready for it?
Do I truly think everyone's going to revolt? I don't think they can find a common target. Do everybody? No, it doesn't have to be everybody. It's going to be some people. And I think that that's the problem, right? There's probably some level of intentional division being created between both sides will say to like hate a different group so that like they'll defend their favorite group, right? But I think eventually it's going to happen. I don't know how many people were too upset about the healthcare CEO getting shot. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that these things should happen, but I don't know how hard conservatives want to ride for like health insurance CEOs. You know what I mean? So,
all right, hang on. Okay. There we go. And is the problem I think that we face as a country is not just economic disparities and all the stuff that we're talking about, the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. It is political power. Right now, and I doubt that there are many Americans, whether you're a progressive as I am or a right-wing Republican, I don't think people can disagree that we have a corrupt campaign finance system. Argue with me? You agree?
No.
Yeah, for sure. I forget what the principle was, but there was some principle where there was some kind of limitation set, and then they got rid of it in the 1980s? Well, or maybe it was in the 1990s.
I agree with you. Yeah.
Citizens United, was that it?
So let me talk about what it means.
Okay.
As a result of the Citizens United Supreme Court decision,
that's what it is.
15, 16 years old. What it says is you're a billionaire. You have now the constitutional right, because your money is your freedom of expression, right? So you don't like Bernie Sanders, you can put millions or hundreds of millions of dollars into a campaign and express your view about how terrible Bernie Sanders is,
right.
And you can buy that election, right? That's your constitutional right. I think that's probably the worst decision that the Supreme Court has ever made. So what is the result of that decision? The result of that decision, let's take us to where we are today, is that Elon Musk, and I know Elon was on your show, and he's here in Austin, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. And we could talk about Elon, but he spent $270 million to elect Trump as president. Okay. I think that's absurd that any one person.
What's the most someone donated towards the Harris campaign?
They spent a lot of money on Harris as well.
They spent $1.5 billion just over the course of
Did one person?
a couple of months.
You got it. All right, let me talk about it.
Well, I don't think one person spent 1.5 billion, but either way, it shouldn't be happening at either side. The most amount of money a single person gave was a $50 million, and that was Bill Gates. What is he talking about? Apparently, Future Forward USA PAC, Super PAC gave Harris $136 million to date. Where does he get 1.5 billion from a single person? Is he just making the number up?
Spent a lot of money on Harris as
They
well.
spent $1.5 billion just over the course of a couple of months.
You got it.
Well, that's not one person. Is Joe Rogan like intentionally? Is Joe Rogan like intentionally misunderstanding what's being said here?
All right, let me talk about it. So I'm not here just to say it's a Republican. That's my point here.
Right.
Okay. So Musk spends that money, and what's his reward? He becomes the most powerful person in government for 3 or 4 months. Okay, fine.
Wait, how much did Musk spend?
And a lot of money on one person, $1 million to.
Yeah.
Okay, and we could talk about it on, but he spent $270 million to elect.
Yeah, that's more than even Bill Gates.
Government for the other day. Fine. But what you have right now, and I just saw this the other day, you are a Republican member of Congress, okay? And you say, there's a reconciliation bill, which we can talk about in a minute, that this is Trump's big, beautiful bill that's coming up literally on the floor of the Senate very shortly.
Yeah, I think he's a little bit like anti-Dem brand right now. The Democrats did it too. I mean, like, there's a problem. It's obviously like just an overall problem. But Musk spending $200 million and $70 million is more than any single contributor that gave to Kamala, at least from what I just looked up. So the $1.5 billion is from a collective of people, which is still a tremendous and insane amount of money. But
so let's say you're a Republican representing a low-income district. And you say, I got a lot of people on Medicaid in my district, and kids can't get to college, and I worry about food programs. I don't think it's a good idea to give tax breaks to billionaires and cut back on Medicaid. You make that announcement today. What happens to you?
Oh, you're fucked. There's no way the Republican Party is going to be okay with you existing in their party.
It's over. You're attacked. The swarm comes for you.
You got it.
I don't even know if that. I truly just don't know, and I could be wrong. I don't even know if that's something that would be palatable for the Democrat Party, but there's a higher chance of it being palatable. I guess it depends on where you are. It's much more palatable. I just wonder if you could actively. No, I don't know. No, you could probably support that. It seems Democrats are really the only ones that are like fighting for Medicare and Medicaid in some capacity.
Yeah.
It's not a swim. It's
the problem is it's already been established, right? That these laws have been established, the power has been given to these people, the money has started flowing, and it's been flowing for a long time now. And this is the issue with starting something that you can't stop.
Well, you can't stop it.
You can stop
and
it.
you got to stop it.
Okay, but if you do stop it, all these people are going to throw all their money at stopping you from stopping it, correct?
Sure.
Right?
Isn't that so funny? They'll spend millions of dollars to stop you from making them pay more taxes that wouldn't even amount to the amount of money that they're giving.
Exactly.
They're going to come up with the best commercials with American flags. This country's all about competition and freedom.
You got it.
The freedom to donate to the party of your choice.
You got it.
Yeah. Stop these communists.
Stop. You're writing their ads for them. They're going to pick it up. With the American,
I could write them.
Yeah,
I mean,
we
really.
could all write. But then we got to take a deep breath and figure out where do we go from there. Now, I wanted to, in my part, as you know, I'm the longest serving independent in American history.
Yes.
I caucus with the Democrats, always have, but you're not going to hear me defending the Democratic Party on this issue because you're right. During the election, it wasn't just Musk and Republicans putting a lot of money into Trump. It was Democratic billionaires putting a lot of money into Kamala and into other candidates as well. And I mentioned there's a guy named, I don't even know his first name, Mr. Massey. Is that name ring a bell?
Thomas Massey?
Thomas from Kentucky.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And this guy,
One hit.
as I am, is opposed to this war in Iran. Just yesterday, Trump gave a long post about how they're going to primary this guy. And what bothers me is you would hope that there would be respect enough for members of Congress that you could vote your own conscience. You could represent your constituency. Every district is different in America. But right now, anybody stands up and say, well, I disagree with President Trump. Bam, you are finished. We're going to primary you. We got all kinds.
It's true. Like the Republican Party right now is psychotic. Donald Trump has ruined the Republican Party. And I think the stage was set by by modern politics for him to come in there. So it's not all his fault. But he really is just like a sweeping force. And if you don't go along with whatever his narrative is, you get completely terminated. And we know this because he was able to kill a bill that was bipartisan that would have helped the border when he wasn't even president because he wanted to run on the issue. He has a considerable amount of control over the conservative party. It's actually insane.
Kinds of money, you're out of there.
It's like there's a legitimate fucking MAGA cult, and then there are other conservatives who I think are well-meaning who are just like, yeah, I'm gonna go with this guy, And so, but then they don't really care about a lot of the negatives that Trump will do, and I think part of it's that they brush it off of like, well, the system's kind of fucked, so it's like whatever,
That happened to Massey yesterday. But let me go back to the Democrats and tell you where the problem.
This episode is brought to you by Squarespace. Ooh. If you've got a skill, there's no reason you can't build a business around it. Squarespace gives you everything you need to offer services and get paid all in one place. Whether you're running consultations, events, or custom experiences, you can build a site that looks professional, add videos, and even put premium content behind a paywall. And the best part, it's all in one place. From invoicing to SEO tools that help people actually find your site. Go to squarespace.com/Rogan for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use the code Rogan to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Can I point something out? Don't you think that there's a Streisand effect to that? Don't you think that there's a blowback for that kind of thing when people recognize that this guy should be allowed to have his own opinions and make some reasonable points, and that people are going to reject this idea?
Maybe.
And that it's not as simple as I think the whole MAGA thing right now is very divided, particularly because one of the things that they voted for was no war. Well, now it seems like we're in a war, right? Yeah. So and it's quick. We're 6 months in, and that's already popped off. And
yeah, I mean, I think that Trump just kind of floundered and he ran out of talking points. He's been highly ineffective since he got elected again. Who would have? Shocker. He came in the first time. He couldn't do healthcare that he promised he could do. He floundered around for a while, right? Well, now he's getting to the wall. Now he's doing it again. He came in. Doge has been seemingly kind of neutral at best, like really not saving any money or finding any real meaningful issues. At least that's what somebody from Doge says. They can't really get a lot of receipts for their stuff. There's been, controversy after controversy. The whole, I'm going to try to end the war in Russia and Ukraine. Couldn't do that. And so now it's like, all right, let's fuck him. Let's go bomb the Middle East. That's what it kind of seems like. It seems like there's just always like a controversy after controversy after controversy. It's fucking insane.
And then people are very concerned with now what happens to our troops overseas that are in these bases that are in vulnerable positions.
So far, from what I've seen, it doesn't really seem like anything's going to happen with the whole Iran situation. I mean, we bombed like 3 of their sites, and then they said they're going to like sue us or something. And Russia and China are not backing them right now, so I don't think it's going to turn into anything considerable. So I'm not super concerned, but still not good.
And what happens with? I mean, there's supposedly documented terror cells that got in through the open border over the last 4 years. So what happens now in America?
I'm sure that there were
on American soil.
Sorry? No, I mean, I agree with those.
When a guy like Thomas Massey steps up and says something, he's going to have a lot more support as well.
The answer is yes. And my only point is he has a right.
Yes.
Somebody else says, hey, I think the war is a great idea. Fine, that's your view. You got to go back. But what bothers me is that if anybody stands up, the next day, we're going to primary. You're out of here, man. And that's the Republicans. Let me talk about the Democrats for a moment, okay? I don't even know your view.
I mean, the Democrats are the lesser of two evils. You have a higher chance of having an alternative perspective as a Democrat than you do as a Republican.
Who's on this, so you may disagree with me. Israel was attacked by Hamas, and Hamas is a terrible terrorist organization that killed 1,200 people, which in a small country like Israel is a lot of people. Terrible, terrible attack. It's a war crime. Israel had a right, in my view, to defend itself.
Absolutely.
But the Netanyahu government did not have a right to kill.
I think the death count's like 50,000 at this point. They definitely did not have the right to retaliate to that degree.
52,000 people in Gaza, wound well over 100,000. And right now, as we speak, Joe, children are starving to death because of Israel's blockades. Yeah. Starving to death. And I brought forth 2 resolutions, which basically were very simple and said no more U.S. military aid to Israel under these conditions. One vote got 15 votes in the Senate, and the other one got 16. Do you think that members of the Senate do not know what's going on in Gaza? The kids are starving to death. The innocent people are being shot down right and left. They know it. Why do you think I couldn't get more votes?
They wouldn't vote against Israel.
Right.
It's political suicide.
Now you're talking.
Right.
Kinda. I mean, I think part of it too, I do think part of the reason why there's more support for Israel than there should be is because we're not the only ones looking to back Israel. Israel has a lot of technologies. They have a good place in the Middle East to spread particular values. Russia is ready to step in as the second that they can. It's a reality. And so if it's not us, it's either Russia or it's China backing them, and then they have the influence in the Middle East. And there's another reason why Israel gets to get away with more shit than they should be able to get away with. It truly is unfortunate.
All right. So in the Republican side, you have moneyed interests saying you speak up against Trump, you're out of here. In the Democratic side, You speak up against the Netanyahu government, you're out of here as well.
Well, I feel like conservatives have the same thing with Israel. I think they're even more pro-Israel. What are you talking about?
And they have been successful. You have super PACs like AIPAC spending a fortune. And they've already knocked off a number of good members of Congress, and they will do it again. So all I'm saying is you got a corrupt campaign finance system on both sides, which is rejecting the will of the American people and end up supporting powerful special interests. And if we do not get a handle on that issue, I worry very much about the future of American democracy.
Are you going to run for president again?
I am 83 years of age.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure the American people will be enthusiastic.
It seems like he's trying to pass on to AOC, which is going to be a tough battle because she is a woman, which is going to make it tough for people to want to vote for her in like a presidential situation. And she went fucking crazy in 2020. I mean, all of us did. I think she's pretty chill now, but it's going to be a tough sell.
So like somebody's 108.
You're still very with it.
Thank you.
You are.
Well, yeah.
I mean, you're a couple years older.
The problem, too, is that like AOC, even in another 3 or 4 years, she's not going to be politically centered enough. I mean, she's going to have to find, if AOC wants a chance to like be president, she's going to have an older, white, politically established, intelligent vice president to do the legwork for her, the optics play, because again, there's going to be enough people that wouldn't want to vote for her. I don't think Tim Walz is very good. I think frankly, I know this isn't really an insult. He's too feminine, and there needs to be a more masculine representation. Joe Biden was solid for Obama. I don't know any other fucking Democrat who's going to be able to do that. So unless she can get all the political savviness herself and then like go alternative for some super fucking white masculine figure, I don't know what the fuck who she would possibly run with.
God.
Gavin Newsom is probably going to be like the top contender, frankly.
Yeah.
Right? Think of that.
Yeah.
You could be off a lot worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Hostage.
So,
what the fuck?
We have been running around the country doing what we call the Fighting Oligarchy Tour, which is why I'm here in Texas. We were in Fort Worth last night. A good turnout.
Keep shifting my camera.
And I think, interestingly enough, Joe, it's not most of the people. We know the people who come out to our rallies. We have a big list of millions of people. But a lot of people are coming to our rallies that we don't know, and I think we know that some of them are Republicans and some of them are independents. Many of them are independents. Because I think across the board, there is growing dissatisfaction with the current politics in America, both parties. And people want a new vision for America, which is also something we don't talk a whole lot about. So, the issues that we talk about is in the richest country on earth, why don't we have the best healthcare system in the world? Why do we have 85 million people who are uninsured or uninsured? And as you were mentioning a moment ago, it deals with the insurance companies and the drug companies. And the function of the current healthcare system is to make these guys very rich, and it works. They make zillions of dollars. And every place you go, in my state, the cost of healthcare is going up this year like 10, 15%. People can't afford it. And we lose thousands of people every year. People get sick. They can't afford to go to the doctor. They die. So, one of the fights that I hope we can win is to have the United States join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right.
Well, we've talked about that a lot on this show, that if you view this country as a community, the most important thing is to protect the most vulnerable members of your community.
Yeah, unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be enough community. It's funny because like conservatives are usually like the biggest pushers of like, what happened to community? What happened to society? Like caring about each other. And then they're the first ones that truthfully do not want to make any meaningful change towards community. They don't want to. They're the ones that don't want there to be healthcare. And I understand the frustration around micromanaged welfare systems. I understand that that's where part of it comes from. But ultimately, I feel like we got to do something. It's just fucking ridiculous.
Period, right?
I agree.
And if we spend insane amounts of money on all sorts of things that people don't agree with, and I think generally most people would agree on some sort of a national healthcare system.
They do.
Most people.
Yeah.
Like there's concepts of socialism that everyone agrees with. One of them is the fire department. Right? Everyone thinks that
now it just exists, so it's like easier for people to like, oh, fire department, yeah, that's just a given, right? That's what we have to do with healthcare.
Every citizen should have access.
All we really need to do is have like a Medicare system that's government run, and that you could still have room for private. And then if the public healthcare system is better, the private will phase out, or they'll figure out a way to exist differently. Like maybe they'll become supplemental insurance or something like that.
That's the same equal access to the fire department, and we all pay into that.
That's right.
And we all believe in education. We all believe that there should be free public education.
Right.
And most people believe that the university system should also be funded. It would benefit everyone.
You got it.
It would benefit everyone to have more educated people that are doing better in the world. You'd have better GDP. You'd have more
people, more intelligent people. Absolutely, more anxiety. I feel like one of the reasons why there's so much anxiety nowadays is because we do have more intelligent people. Like, even your annoying fucking 18-year-old on TikTok virtue signaling is more intelligent than the 18-year-olds were 20 years ago, because they're more educated, and that increases your level of anxiety, I think, because when you're, ignorance is bliss, right? So when you're not ignorant, you do not be blissful. When you don't be blissful anymore.
Successful people.
Absolutely right.
You just think about everything all the time. Like, people who aren't as educated can literally just fucking stare at a fucking wall, and somehow time passes and they don't think about anything. But I stress about every little thing going on.
If you want to make America great again, less losers. How do you make less losers? Don't stack the deck against them. One of the first things that you'd have to do is figure out why these communities and these cities have been the exact same way for decade after decade. Back to Jim Crow and the Red Line laws and all these. Why is nothing being done to fix that or to correct that problem? And it becomes this political beach ball that they just bounce around the air at a concert. And everybody, it's like there's certain things that just keep coming up that make you just go, well, how are we still talking about gay marriage? How is that still coming up? And it's like, poof.
Because conservatives.
Throw it up in the air.
All right, let me get back to that. But I want to say
gay marriage is also a cultural problem. Like, that, there's no actual reason to not have gay marriage legal. It's a distraction problem. Like, gay and trans issue is overwhelmingly a distraction problem. I'm not saying we can't have conversations about trans women in sports. I get that. But it's overwhelmingly just a distraction. It's just like a conservative strategy. It's like, well, we have no other actual meaningful policy. And there is no meaningful policy, unfortunately, from the conservatives. But... And so what do we get? Oh, trans, scary. That's like the whole narrative.
It's like,
there's a bunch of these things, right?
Yeah, all right. The first point you made, you want to make America great? Right.
Yeah,
have the best,
less losers.
Have the best educated workforce in the world. How's that? Radical idea? Yeah. I don't think so.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
Better education.
You live longer when you have better education, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
All right. So what does that mean? It means right now, I talk to psychologists all the time.
You do?
Yeah, I do, because I was the chairman of what's called the ranking member of the Health Education Labor Committee. So, we deal with medical people all the time.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't me personally. No. That I may need also, but no, I was talking in a more general sense. Look, what are the most important years of human development? You're a human being. What are the most important years?
You're a child.
That's right.
Yeah.
0 to 4. How's our child care system doing?
Yeah, not so good.
It's a disaster.
Not great.
So you got a
it's
rational...
down to like the food that you eat. That's a huge issue. If you don't eat good food, you're going to be a dumb kid. You need like legitimately nutritious food to be intelligent.
Society says, okay, the kids are the future of America, right? You talked about the sense of being a community. All right. So if I love this country and I want this country to do well into the future, I have to worry about the children, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right now, for economic reasons, when I was a kid, by the way, there's another shock some of your younger listeners here, there was one worker in a family could actually bring home the bacon and pay the bills.
No? Yeah. Back in the old days.
Back in the old days, yeah, man. So I grew up in a working class family. We didn't have any money. My dad went out to work, mom stayed home, and that was it.
Yeah. Made healthier people.
Yeah, that's not really how things are anymore. You can't really do that. You can't necessarily survive on one paycheck.
People do that way.
It did. I think in many respects it did.
Well, something happened where they sort of devalued the woman's role as a mother, and by convincing them that they have to be a part of the workforce. And
I don't know.
That's part of it. I think the other.
I mean, I think that that's ridiculous. I think that what really happened is once women were allowed into the workforce, it made corporations go, "Oh, women are in the workforce now. We have more labor. We could just pay people less and not give a fuck. We can justify paying people less now because as it becomes more normal for two workers to be in a household." I don't think it has anything to do with that at all. This whole idea that it's like, oh, we convince women that. No, dude, like, it's a fucking billionaire psyop. Get the fuck out of here.
They have as women legitimately wanted, careers as well.
Sure.
And the other thing that happened, maybe most significantly, is you needed
to stay.
You have more supply. I genuinely think it was. I don't think that it was manufactured. No, there's more women now. We have more people in the workforce now. Let's just we have a bunch of people. We can just pay people less. They'll settle for it. We have more people now. Oh, fuck it. I just think it's ridiculous. We're like, we convince women they don't have to be mothers. Okay, great. No, I think that we gave them more options, and like, there's a lot of times they don't want to be with a piece of shit man. And I'm not all men are shit, but like, there are a lot of men that feel very entitled to being the worker of the house, and they don't really pull their weight outside of just working.
Alive. Two breadwinners to stay alive.
Yeah, that's the problem. The real problem was financially, it just seemed so difficult for one person to pay for everything.
Exactly.
The only way to do it was to have both parents working.
I was thinking, I grew up in Brooklyn before I moved to Vermont, and we lived in a rent-controlled apartment. And I was doing the arithmetic. My dad didn't make much money, but we didn't pay much in rent. And I couldn't quite remember, what his salary was and all that. But my guess is we paid, as I recall, talk to my brother about this, about 18% of my dad's salary for rent. 18%. Ain't nobody in America today who's paid 18%.
Yeah, you know, like a fifth of your salary for rent. I mean, what's rent now? A one bedroom is like $1,000. People aren't making $5,000 and then getting a one bedroom, you know?
I mean,
right.
That's why you need two breadwinners, because you're paying 40%, 50%.
Right.
Yeah. But getting back to this issue of education, which I think is key. If you were rationally thinking about the future of America, if you loved America, as we all do, you're going to have the best child care system in the world, so the kids will do well in school. Right now, in child care, you got workers out there making $15 an hour.
Yeah.
And you have families that cannot afford child care. In my state, I don't know, it's about $20,000 a year to send your kid to child care. So you're making $50,000 a year. How do you pay that? $60,000.
Right.
You can do that. And then education. You got kids who want an education. They want to go to college. They want to go to trade school. We desperately need. Here's something that really drives me a little bit nuts. In America today, Joe, not only is our healthcare system failing because it's based on greed, not on need, but we need more doctors. All right, all over the country, people have to wait, sometimes months to get to a doctor's office. We have a massive nursing shortage. We need more dentists, big problem in dentistry. We need more mental health counselors. We need more pharmacists. How come in the richest country in the world we don't have enough doctors and nurses?
I think that there's like 100 different factors. I think part of it is that we have a less educated workforce in general, because a lot of education systems are failing because they're based off of income of families, and which are property taxes, which are very difficult because people have less and less money. I think that school is way too hard to be a doctor or a nurse, which sounds weird, but there's a lot of over bloating when it comes to the school system. Like in some of these instances, you need like math degrees that you shouldn't necessarily need. It's also overly expensive for a lot of these people. There's a lot of greed inside of the system for people to make a tremendous, try to make a tremendous amount of money, despite the fact that they maybe shouldn't be able to make a tremendous amount of money. There's just so many different variables and factors as to why we have a significant shortage of these different institutions.
Because it's very difficult to do. It's very difficult to become a doctor, and the bills that you have from education.
Like, it should be generally difficult to become a doctor, but they should make it easier to become a doctor. Make it less expensive. Cut down on some of the fat. Cut down on some of the fat, like my fat. No, but cut down on some of the fat when it comes to the different types of schooling that you necessarily need, things like that.
Education are overwhelming.
All right, you want to go to, let's just say,
what's happening here?
Tomorrow you announce to the world, you give it up this podcast, you want to go to medical school, all right? You got it?
Yeah.
You know how much, if you don't have any money, you know how much you're going to graduate medical school in debt?
Probably $250,000 easy.
Double that.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not, obviously it varies per person, but it is not unusual for guys, people, working class homes, go to medical school, about $500,000 in debt.
Yeah.
Right.
Nurses, I don't know, $150,000 in debt. That is insane.
It's insane.
All right.
Yeah.
We need more doctors. So I want to encourage you. Joe,
Right.
I want you to go to medical school.
Right.
Hey, good news. We're paying your tuition, and we need you out there as soon as we can get you.
Why wouldn't that be subsidized?
Of course you should subsidize it.
Right. Of course. Yeah. But there's so many different. What would you have done? Like, imagine if you hadn't gotten derailed and they hadn't conspired against you, and you actually became the Democratic candidate for president and you won. What would you have done differently?
Okay. How many hours?
I mean, I wonder if he could have been effective. Like, that's a genuine question. I wonder if, like, Sanders is somebody who could necessarily get things done as a president. I like him, but I wonder if some of his policies are just too idealistic for people to actually be willing to pass.
We got all the time in the world, Bernie.
I know.
What would you have done first day in office?
Well, it's not just the first thing. I would have dealt with this campaign finance reform issue. And there are ways that you can get around that Supreme Court decision.
How do you do that?
You move toward public funding of elections, which says that, Joe, you want to run against me? That's great. But you're not going to get super PAC money. We're going to publicly fund you. You get 1,500 signatures that says you're a serious candidate. You'll get a certain amount of money to run for office.
I mean, that sounds fine. Freedom bucks. I think Andrew Yang called it. So
funded by the government.
Yes, absolutely.
Someone running for president funded by the current president.
Not the current president, but no, I don't think that's a bad idea. Like some kind of a limitation on the Okay, I think some kind of a limitation wouldn't be a bad idea.
Well, not the current president.
No, with the current
Congress.
government.
And people say, taxpayer dollars are going to, but that makes a lot more sense than having billionaires fund elections, which is what you got right now. So that's number one.
So you think there should be one?
Yeah, I mean, listen, you're not going to find like the perfect solution, but I think that there definitely is a better solution to what we're doing than what we're doing right now.
A certain number, you just get a certain allotted amount of money that you could use for your campaign,
right.
and everybody gets the same amount.
That exists in some places right now.
Does it? Where?
Yeah, in New York City right now.
Oh, in New York City. Yeah.
And other places as well. So if you agree, you're going to raise, you're not going to raise private money. You go the public route. It exists in a number of communities, and I think that is.
Did you watch the New York City debates, the mayoral
I heard.
debates?
I got involved, and I'm supporting Mr. Mendani.
A lot of people.
Yeah, I hope that he does pretty well. I mean, I know there's a lot of like fear about it. Some of the things that he wants to do is a little strange. I think he was talking about. I mean, they're not even saying a bad idea. I'm a little hesitant, but fuck it. Like, who gives a shit? You know, like I think one of the things that was like he was going to do, I think government grocery stores. Maybe it's a good idea. I don't know. Can't be worse than what the fuck we have already. So might as well, right? Might as well.
People are. Well, especially after that debate.
Right.
It seems like everybody else was essentially saying, I've been to Israel more than you've been to Israel. I'm going to go to Israel before you do.
Right. They think they're campaigning to be foreign, minister for Israel or something.
Yeah, I know that New York works pretty close with Israel. That's the thing. So people, just so that people know, because the only reason I want to explain these things is because I don't want people to just be like weirdly anti-Semitic and be like, oh, see, the Jews control everything, because they don't. The reason why there is a lot of, hey, I like Israel in New York is because there is a very heavy like Orthodox Jew representation that could be the make or break for a vote. And so if you don't, people be real pander to them in many instances, or at least historically, you may not get you may not be able to win. And so that's why that exists, just to be clear. And there is like a lot of working with Israel. Like I think New York specifically, like our tax dollars go to helping like fucking train some soldiers inside of Israel. It's actually insane how much there is going on over there.
But talk about money in politics.
Yes.
Just look at New York City. Right now, there's the election tomorrow, I think, right? I think it's tomorrow. Tuesday, what's today, Monday? Tomorrow's Tuesday, right?
Yes.
That's the election. They're spending a huge amount of money. These are Democratic with some cases.
Who's in the lead right now?
The polls say Cuomo by a little bit, but I think
this is like a little bit old because I think Cuomo dropped out at this point.
Zoran has a lot of momentum. We'll see.
Polls are weird.
In a race like that, yes.
Well, they're weird in every race. They were wrong with Hillary in 20.
Well, yeah, but I think that's because what's his face decided to pull the email thing up right before the vote, so that's why it was so wrong. It wasn't really wrong. She would have won if they didn't rehash that.
2020, or in 2016 rather, they were wrong in 2024 with Harris and Trump. Like, I don't understand polls because that
one makes more sense. Yeah,
I have a feeling that the majority of them are inaccurate.
Well, I think they are increasing. I don't know.
I doubt that the majority of them are inaccurate, but I guess like you could argue that depending on where the polling comes from, they might try to skew the data to almost be an advocacy group for whoever they want to win, right? So like if you're a more progressive, let's say it's like Trump versus Kamala. If you're a more progressive leaning side, you might want to make it seem like Kamala is doing better than she necessarily could have, because that might inspire confidence in voters for them to be like, yeah, we're on the winning side. Maybe. I mean, I don't really 100% know. But it seems like generally speaking, the polling is somewhat accurate, no?
Answer to your question. The pollsters would argue that's not the case. But I think you got a lot of folks who are not all that enthusiastic about honestly giving honest answers to a pollster.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true too. Yeah.
Too.
And that's part of the problem, right?
All right, but
yeah, that's true too. I mean, you're polling people, and if the people aren't going to be 100% honest, that could be an issue too. Like if you're ashamed of voting for Trump, but you you want to vote for Trump, but you're ashamed of it, you might tell a pollster that you're voting for Kamala, but you don't necessarily. That's a good point too.
This could be on my first day as president. Well, I have you drop in, say hello,
hi,
have a cup of coffee. All right, good. And then I think we'd declare something like our healthcare system as an emergency, and figure out ways that we can do what every other major country on earth does, and that is guarantee healthcare to all people. So one of the things you do is say, okay, we need tens of thousands of more doctors and hundreds of thousands of more nurses and dentists and so forth and so on, and we're going to move aggressively to make sure.
And we need more plumbers, by the way, too. Like we need. It's so frustrating that we need so many more doctors, and we need dentists, and we need nurses, and we need plumbers. 500,000. We're gonna have a lack of 500,000 plumbers in the next 2 years. That's the estimate. And we need more HVAC techs, and we need more mechanics, and we need more welders, and we need more. These are all service jobs. And Trump is so focused on factories. And I get it. You want to expand jobs, that's fine. But that's going to take like a decade to implement. And that's if technology doesn't kill those jobs through like massive automation. But I feel like if Trump was actually being honest and he actually truly did want to bring jobs back to America, he would do both at the same time. He would say, we want to bring factory jobs back to America in the long run because it might take us like a decade. But right now, we're going to focus on getting you into a trade. We're going to make it so it's free to go to a trade school, especially since a lot of young men went out for Trump. So now, like, you can raise a family on a plumber job, maybe even single income. So why aren't we pushing these service jobs, which our economy centralizes around services, 80% of our GDP, whereas like manufacturing is only like 20%, like that's goods, that are hard to automate away because that's a threat. Why are we not focusing on getting people to do these things? Why aren't we making it meaningfully easier to become a nurse, make it a little cheaper, get rid of some of the courses that aren't necessarily relevant? Same thing with doctors. Streamline plumbers, streamline electricians, streamline HVAC techs. Why aren't we doing that? Because that's a 2-year thing. In 2 years, you can drastically expand trade jobs. You could have that young man that's 18 right now, having having a livable wage in the next 2 years. Less than that. You could have him in like some kind of a apprenticeship in like 2 months. Why aren't we doing that? And it makes me feel like that, this administration really isn't interested in expanding jobs for the middle class, because we would be heavily pushing trades in schools and doctors and stuff in schools. But we don't really do that. And so that's why I think the whole manufacturing and the whole tariff thing, I think that was more about appearing like you were trying to solve a problem, but going into probably an impossible task of bringing all this manufacturing back to make it seem like you tried, but like all the systems at Beast prevented you, when you could have went with a much simpler route of like massive expansion of trade jobs, and you probably could have added 1 million jobs, 1 million service jobs that are hard to automate within the next 2 years into our economy. But we just didn't do that. It's just ridiculous.
That in America, everybody in this country has health care as a human right. So I think that's number one. Number two, at a time of massive
I also think that like in some of these instances, some people just aren't like educated enough to know that they can go into a trade job. Like if you told me at 18 years old, hey, you should go be a fucking plumber or something, and maybe it'll kick your ass a little bit, but you could raise a family on, I'd be like, oh, cool. I don't know what the fuck. You think most people know what the fuck they want to do by 18 years old? No. So it's give them a direction that they can go into. Give them a direction they can go into. A lot of people are looking for guidance, and like if you keep telling young people, hey, just you'll figure it out. That's what they kept telling me. You won't. Okay, it's ridiculous. Or you'd be like, hey, go into this trade job, and it's by 30 you'll have enough money to switch if you want to. You'll have enough money to switch if you want to. That could be much more productive. I genuinely think that.
Income and wealth inequality. You don't give tax breaks to billionaires. You demand that they start paying their fair share of taxes. And one of the problems that we have, it's not just an American issue, it's a global issue. A lot of these zillionaires are hiding their money in tax havens in the Cayman Islands and elsewhere. And that's an international issue. But I think we have to have a fair tax system which says that individuals and both and corporations that are making a whole lot of money start paying their fair share of taxes.
What is their fair share?
I don't know. I mean, under Eisenhower, the very rich paid at their upper levels, 90%, But let me be very honest with you, Joe.
I think when you say 90%, because he's saying 90% tax, you have to talk about what that means, the marginal tax. So it's like 90% after $500,000 a year. So you make $500,000 a year, you tax it, whatever. Everything over $500,000 is taxed at 90%. I think that's fine. I think that's perfect. $500,000 is a lot of money. Why not?
90% is kind of crazy, though. Right?
No, that's not, of course. That's just for the your billionth dollar. You know what I mean? It's not your first dollar. It's
so if you make $1 billion, you pay $900 million?
No, see, he's just so fucking stupid. There's no way he doesn't know what a marginal tax rate is.
No, that's not what it means. It means on your $900 million, you're going to pay 90%.
Okay.
All right. But,
there's no way Joe Rogan doesn't understand marginal taxes, right? Like, we all know that if we're implementing a 90% tax rate on a certain amount of money, and by the way, I think $500,000 is a great idea. That's everything after $500,000 would be taxed at 90%. So, like, you have whatever your tax rate is up to 90%, blah, 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 blah. You get all your taxable deductions in there as well. Okay, you would make $500,000 a year. That's an insane amount of money, by the way. Maybe it should be higher, whatever. Maybe it should be $1 million. I don't know. But everything over that number, $500,000 and your $501,000 or whatever, that's when you would start taxing at the 90% tax rate. And what this does is it either takes that money and gives it to the government, which can be ineffective, or is in many instances. But like, let's say in a world where we get our government under more control, that they actually give a shit. But let's say that it either goes to the government so they could redistribute it in a more meaningful way, education, whatever. Or if you're a fucking business owner and you're making $500,000 a year, and you're like, if I make myself $500,001, I'm going to get taxed in the dick hole. You know what? I'm just going to go pay my workers more. You know? I'm going to go pay my workers more. I don't think it's a bad idea. And just so you know, like, billionaires don't pay themselves meaningful incomes. They give themselves like $100,000 a year because they don't need money anymore. They just like, they just use their assets to like leverage for loans. So,
well, the other thing that I would do, and you got to deal with this climate change issue. And I know that there are some people who think climate change is a hoax. It ain't a hoax. I think the last 10 years have been the warmest on record. And we can create millions of...
Yeah, like modern record, like I guess human record.
Paying jobs, transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency, to solar, to wind, and other sustainable energies.
This episode is brought to you by Paleo Valley, 100% grass-fed beef sticks. Ooh. I live a super busy lifestyle. I'm always running from one thing to the next, and Paleo Valley is the perfect on-the-go snack. These beef sticks are legit. No junk, no garbage ingredients, just pure, clean protein fermented the old-school way, so they're shelf-stable without chemicals. That is huge. And the fermentation part, it's actually good for your gut. Most people don't even think about that, but if you care about performance, you have to care about your gut health. And taste-wise, they're awesome. They've sold over 55 million of these things. That's not just hype. That's people coming back again and again because it works. Go to paleovalley.com and use the code Rogan to get 20% off, or find them on Amazon. I think the climate change issue is very complicated. And
not really, no.
And I think, did you see the Washington Post piece that they wrote where they did this long-term view? First of all, the reality...
How long-term?
...is that the Earth's temperature has never been static, right? We could both agree on that. It's always been up and down. There's been ice ages and heat waves. And then...
Absolutely, but that doesn't mean that there's not a human element that can impact that further.
Washington Post looked at it. What was the time period that they looked at? That essentially they found that we're in a cooling period.
Yeah. What's the time period, though, Joe? Can you tell me?
The Earth over the past X amount of years.
Give me the X amount of year. Don't
and
be
this
afraid.
Was like a very inconvenient discovery.
No, it's not, because the amount of years he's talking about, by the way, is like 500 million years. But we'll wait for him to pull it up on the screen.
But they had to report the data, and kudos to them for doing that. Scientists have captured the Earth's climate change over the last 485 million years. Here's
485 million years. I find this to just be disingenuous, because absolutely the Earth goes up and down and climate change and whatnot. But in this cooling period we are in, which I'm sure we're in a cooling period relative to the last 500 million years, humans have evolved to be able to exist in the cooling period, right? So humans are about 300,000 years old. Okay. Now, what is that, like 6% of 500 million? I don't know. And modern humans are not. More modern humans, obviously we as a society have adapted through this cooling period to be able to survive. And so, yes, it's cool right now if you look at it from 500 million years, but we still have an impact on the temperature, on the climate in our cooling period, and we can raise the temperature and have a very negative impact on us as human beings. If we all die, the Earth will still survive and thrive with different organisms. But I find it interesting that he uses this data, which is fine, that goes across 500 million years to... Oh, by the way, what's 300,000 to 500 million? That's like less than 1%. What the fuck am I talking about? It's like a fucking 0.1% of the time. I said like 6%. That's fucking insane. Like 500 million. He's using 500 million years to be like, yes, this issue is like really complicated, because over the past 500 million years, we're kind of in a cooling period this last like 500,000 years. Isn't that fucking crazy? No, not at all. It's not crazy at all. This information is almost completely irrelevant to any conversation that Joe Rogan has ever had in his life. It doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything for any conversation. Other than to try to be like, yeah, see, we're already kind of going up and down, so things are pretty cool. What does this have to do with anything?
Surprising place we stand now. So look at the far end of that graph, and you see we're in a cooling period.
Wow.
Well, I'm not sure. I didn't read that article, but
That article is irrelevant. Like the only person who would bring it up is somebody who was a massive conspiracy theory skeptic that was desperate to try to say that climate change wasn't a real thing. That's it, because it is an irrelevant statistic to observe the world over 500 million years and go like, hey, isn't that interesting? No, it's actually fucking boring. It has nothing to do with anything. Modern, like, humans have only been around for 300,000 years. This is completely irrelevant to the conversation. Okay? It doesn't really matter. That's like saying if you take, I don't even know I love to eat food. I don't know how to cook food. But that's just like saying, like, hey, if you cook this thing, this thing cooks at a relatively low amount. You're supposed to cook it at 160. But you cooked it at 180, so it ruined it. It's like, oh yeah, well, my lasagna cooks at 400 degrees. Fuck you, I owned you. What? That's literally what he's doing right now. It's like, what are you talking about? What the fuck?
Scientists who are out there, I think.
I know, but there's a lot of money involved in that too, Bernie. That's part of the
There's a lot of money apparently involved in fucking pushing conspiracies too, Joe. So
problem. There's a lot of money involved in this whole climate change emergency issue, and there's a lot of control.
I think that the narrative in many instances has been sensationalized. I absolutely would agree with that. That doesn't mean that it's not a serious issue, and it gets sensationalized in both directions. It doesn't just get sensationalized, upwards. It gets sensationalized downwards. Conservatives don't believe climate change exists at all, and progressives in some instances will be like, "Oh my God, we're fucked in the next 4 seconds if we don't." And it's like, yeah, that's a little that's sensationalized. I agree, but that doesn't mean that it's not real. You can't just say like it's this whole fucking like people just pretend shit's not real.
Control, and that's a big part of this problem. Not only that, if we're just talking about primarily carbon and carbon footprint, what are we going to do about China? Because China is like what percent?
Absolutely, I mean I agree with that as well.
Of
they are the major polluter right now in terms of carbon. Sure. We're number 2. We used to be 1. They're number 1 right now.
I think they have.
Are we number 2? I don't think we're number 2. I mean, historically we might be number 2 if you count how much we've been pumping out over the past 100 years. We might still be number 2, but I don't think we're number 2 like in today's standards.
Enormous percent of the global. I think it's
they're number 1. I don't know what
very
the
high. It's
Look,
very high.
It's not an American issue. It is a global issue, and all I can tell you is that we are, in my view, going to see more extreme weather disturbances in the coming years than we have ever, and we're seeing them right now.
Right, but scientists don't agree. Well, this is where it gets confusing, because scientists that are in agreement. There's all these entanglements whenever someone's discussing something.
The majority of scientists agree. So
whether it's economics or whether it's health issues or pharmaceutical drugs, there's financial entanglements. I think we both agree with that, right?
Yep.
And I think this is part of the issue with this whole climate change emergency as well, because it's not just that we could all agree pollution is a major factor. It's a huge issue in the world today. We could all agree with that, right?
Sure.
I think one of the things that we have to recognize.
I mean, even if you look at it outside of climate change being an issue, it's still a huge issue in the context that it's unhealthy and there's like carcinogenics involved.
Is that whenever there's an issue that everyone can agree on, you're going to have a bunch of people that capitalize on that issue and they look to gain more money. They have financial issues that they push forward in order to capitalize on this issue, but then also power and control.
Sure, but don't you what? Control. Sure, there might be a level of truth to that. Like a company that sells a lot of fucking solar energy might be interested in sensationalizing the dangers of fossil fuels. I 100% agree with that. Also, though, the incredibly powerful, very well established, much more financially set fossil fuel industry invests a significant amount of money, more money, because they have more money and resources, into making you seem like it's not an issue. The problem is that like when Joe Rogan talks about this, he seems to be more sympathetic to the side of the conspiracy, and that's the fucking problem.
These things like they're trying to institute in the UK where they have these 15-minute cities, this concept where you're not allowed to travel. They'll be able to look at your carbon footprint.
Okay.
See, that's the problem. The problem is...
I don't think that's 15-minute cities are... The 15-minute cities is just like an urban planning concept where residents can access most of the city in 15 minutes. What's the problem with something like that? I don't really even... Who fucking cares? The redevelopment of a city isn't even going to be something that matters. What are you talking about? And we kind of already have 15-minute cities in New York anyway. Like, and when you're very closely packed together, you're going to have like a grocery store or something, and this and that and the other thing, all the way around. very locally. So like, oh, hey, there's like a concept of 15-minute cities. Isn't that crazy? Not really. It's like a 1% thing. It's an outlier. It's not an issue.
Giving people that are in power, these people that we've all discussed that have so much money and so much control over our societies, multinational corporations, giving them more control over citizens. And this is
what is 15-minute cities? How does it give you more control over citizens? It's just a concept of being able to walk everywhere. What the fuck is he talking about? What?
Vehicle for that. And this is what's dangerous about this whole climate change emergency, because it allows these fucking creeps that have been controlling people and controlling.
It's all conspiracy. Like I'm not going to say that what he's saying isn't real, but what I'm going to say is that it is much more in the favor of like the established fossil fuel industries, and Joe Rogan is peddling conspiracies. I mean, he's completely fucking conspiracy brained. Like Joe Rogan means well, but like he is so fucking conspiracy brained. It's actually insane.
What you do and what you say and how you spend your money with people that already live in check to check, and you put additional constraints on them, and you make
the constraint of being able to walk everywhere
them even more scared. And then you put additional measures where you can look at their carbon footprint, you can look at the amount they travel. What do you put a carbon tax on these people? Let's figure out how to extract
these
more
are not like widespread concepts that we need to be focusing on right now.
Money from them. That's what bothers me about this climate change emergency.
So what bothers you is 15-minute cities, not the carcinogenics getting pumped into the atmosphere?
We can all agree pollution is a terrible thing.
We can all agree pollution is a terrible thing, but I'm rich and I really have nothing to worry about. I'm not actually meaningfully invested in any of these topics. And what if, isn't it terrible that they might make cities where you can walk everywhere? Like, that's gross. Okay.
I should agree to that. The beautiful earth that sustains us and all life on this planet is being poisoned as we speak. We're killing all the fish in the ocean and sucking them out in giant numbers. 94% of all the big fish that are in the ocean are gone over the last, whatever it is.
When you go to war against nature, you lose.
Yeah, because you're a part of nature.
Loses. Exactly
but
right.
We're worshiping the almighty dollar above the mother.
You asked me when I ran.
That seems to be what Joe's doing. I don't even think Joe's like grifting. I think that he's just fucking. I think that he has a CTE is what. Like, it makes no sense that you would look at this and go, there's a lot of money in, companies pushing like the climate crisis, which, by the way, I'm sure that there is money in that, but then not acknowledging that there is even more money in keeping things the way they are for big fossil fuel companies, and just not that part doesn't get parsed into his thought process. And so he ends up fucking attacking these 15-minute cities for the majority of his criticism about climate change is, it's bad, but what about 15-minute cities was like his biggest example. Like, what the fuck?
And for president, one of the interests, it's something else to run for president because you get around, you meet all kinds of people and you learn all kinds of things. And one of the things that I did, we met with a lot of Native Americans. And one of the reasons is, their tradition was going from way back, respect for nature. That they understood way back when, that you kill off all of the buffalo, you ain't gonna...
Sorry, I can't be respecting nature, Bernie. I need to jack off to AI-generated porn, which uses a significant amount of electricity and water and actually has pretty devastating impacts on surrounding ecological infrastructure. But bro, what am I supposed to do? I want to jack off to Ash Katzum's mom's big fat fucking tits. Am I supposed to not goon all day? Am I not supposed to sit in my house, jack off to AI that destroys the world, and run my air conditioner at a cool 60 degrees when it's only 70 degrees out so that I get to sleep with 6 heavy blankets so I can be a little bit more comfortable while I also run a fan onto me? I want it to be winter in my house all year long. Okay, Joe? Okay, Bernie? What the fuck?
And I have nothing to eat, right?
Right.
They understood that. And then you understand that you live in harmony with nature, which is, I think, what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
And if you lose that...
I live in harmony with nature. I like to harm it with my money. And I intentionally buy cans of diet soda and I throw the rings into the ocean. I go out of my way to find plastic rings. The fuck's a turtle ever done for me? What? The hell? What has a turtle ever done for me?
That harmony, I worry about the future of humanity in general.
Which is the problem with financial competitiveness. When you put that almighty dollar above all else,
that's right.
Then all you think about it. And
Joe Rogan goes from like having his fucking conspiracy brain meltdown to being a completely normal, rational person within like it's like a light switch flips. It's actually almost scary. It's like your grandpa having a really nice conversation about the old days and then just shouting out a racial slur about black people. It's just like so fucking strange.
You're only alive for 100 years, so it's just hit the gas. Hit the gas for 100 years, and who gives a shit what happens after I'm gone? I'm going to die with the most toys. Yay, I win in the dirt.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And that is, which takes us to another issue.
Okay.
And that is artificial intelligence and robotics.
Yeah, it's a big issue.
Automation.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
giant issue.
Huge issue. All right.
Arguably one of the biggest.
So let's back it up.
Back it up on my big dick. Well, it's not big. But
Americans are angry. And one of the reasons they are angry is that over the last, just to give you one fact here, last 52 years, you and I understand, everybody in the world understands, there's been a huge explosion in technology, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing.
And what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to provide us like a Wall-E type life, except hopefully minus being morbidly obese. And it's not necessarily. It's really just giving us the obese part without the majority of Americans benefiting from the technology.
Today never could have happened.
I mean, we are benefiting from it in different ways, but like rich people are money maxing as they cut jobs.
Years ago, factories far more automated, offices far more automated. I became mayor of Burlington, Vermont in 1981. There was not a computer in the building, okay? So
by the way, great town.
It is a great town. In any case, an explosion of technology, significant increase in worker productivity, right? We're talking to millions of people now. Never could have happened before, right? That's true. Workers are producing a lot more.
Yeah, because of the technology.
Tell me, how a real inflation accounted for wages been over the last 52 years with all of that increase in worker productivity? Workers doing a lot better?
Not so good.
Not so good.
No.
In fact, there are studies out there that suggest in real inflation accounted for dollars, wages are actually lower now than they were 52 years ago. Okay?
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that.
And during that same period, there's a massive transfer of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. So that's what technology has done over the last 50 years. And it's not, there was a study, I don't know if you saw this, it blew me away. I can't remember who did it, Kaiser, some reputable people did it. This is what they said. They do a poll to the American people and they say, Americans, do you think you are better off today than somebody in your situation, middle class, whatever you may be, was 40 years ago, okay? Are you better off today than somebody in your circumstance would have been 40 years ago? What was the answer? What do you think?
Yeah.
And what the answer was, and we got to deal with this one. This is big. The answer was, there were a number of people say, hey, look, I got a cell phone. It's great. I got a big screen TV. Right. It's great. I can fly all over the world. It's great. I get sick. I get treatment now that I never could have had 40 years ago. Right?
Yeah, it's like one of those things where it's like necessities are fucking more expensive now than they have ever been. I don't know how I didn't get that off first. Necessities are more expensive now. Or, excuse me, necessities are more expensive, right? Like your house is more expensive than it's ever been. And shit like housing and healthcare are more expensive now. But then you look at other things, like a fucking cell phone is relatively inexpensive. I mean, even like video game systems are inexpensive. Games have largely stayed the same in price. I mean, we went from like $50 to like, what, $70 over the past 50 fucking years? Or maybe 30 years. Inflation does not account for that. Things are relatively cheaper. Like luxuries are relatively cheaper nowadays than they used to be, but like your necessities are much more expensive. It's fucked up.
Right?
Those are facts.
All really positive
facts.
But on average, most people said, I think the situation is worse today than it was 40 years ago. And that is what we got to deal with. So you can have all the technology in the world. Right. What the hell does it mean if your life is not improving? In fact, in many ways, getting worse.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
sure. Well, in some ways, technology is making your life feel worse, too, because like the internet, and you're constantly comparing. Comparison is the thief of joy, they say.
Again, we'll go back to polls again, because I don't necessarily believe that polls are totally accurate. But I do think that the issue with it being virtually impossible for one person to sustain the entire family these days, one worker, the father or the mother, whoever it is, to sustain the entire, that's a giant issue. All these issues when it comes to
I don't think that's an issue at all. I literally do not give a singular fuck about that. I don't really care that one person can't sustain a family necessarily. I do care that two people struggle to sustain a family, right? We're not quite at the point, like I understand single parents and that's a problem, and I understand that that's an issue, But ultimately, I care more about right now, like even with a two-family household, it's still incredibly difficult for a lot of people to support their family.
To labor, when it comes to minimum wage, I think you and I are in agreement on all these. I think the minimum wage in this country is ridiculous. I mean, to $7,
yeah.
What?
It's insane.
It's insane.
Yeah, I think that we're a little beyond the minimum wage at this point. I think that minimum wage at this point should just be kept up to keep up with inflation, roughly 2 or 3%, and I think that we should focus on some kind of a universal basic income to subsidize wages. I think a UBI would be exponentially better from a business perspective, for small businesses especially. You know what I mean? Like if you didn't have to drastically, the big businesses, they can afford to drastically increase minimum wage if they wanted to, but they simply don't. And if they were forced to, they would either increase it or they would just really automate even faster. They'd invest more money into automation. And so I don't necessarily think that's the way that we should go. I think that like the really big benefit to like some kind of a universal basic income or a negative income tax is that small businesses can compete because they get that subsidy. So a small business just couldn't survive with a massive minimum wage increase, but a big business could by shifting to automation. But if we do a UBI and we subsidize the income in some capacity, I think that like that's a better way to incentivize small business. It's like the same thing with like universal healthcare. It helps small business, you know?
How do you live off $7? You go to Jimmy John's, you get a sub. How much is a sub? How much is a sub, like a big sub at Jimmy John's? Some guy was just did a TikTok video where he's like, they're trying to say that minimum wage $15 is too much. I think he had a sub that he bought for $25. So imagine that's your lunch. So imagine you have to work 3.5 hours just to pay for a sandwich. Imagine how insane that is.
It's insane.
That's insane. Like
all I have to do is beat my wife for a sandwich.
How do you eat? How do you eat dinner? How do you eat lunch?
Joe,
how do you eat breakfast?
I have talked to people who make $10-12 an hour trying to raise a kid.
Jesus.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, the argument against that is, hey, these are entry-level jobs that are supposed to be for kids.
No, and that's factually incorrect. Yeah, of course, that's true to some.
Why the fuck would you want kids making your McDonald's? Yeah, you know, minimum, like these McDonald's people, this is just kids that making them a burger. Why do you think that there's no fucking pickles when you ask for pickles? Why do you think that they don't put fucking ketchup on it? Why do you think that there's so many fucking mistakes? It's because the kids don't care. I don't want kids making my McDonald's. And by the way, McDonald's is already fucking expensive as fuck, and they're pushing all the automation, so you know that they have plenty of money. All right? I don't want kids working there. Pay enough for it. I want the fucking 60-year-old guy that has, you know, that's what I want. I want a 60-year-old man making my fucking burger because he's gonna do it right. He takes pride in his job. All right, young people don't. So pay. You know, give enough of a livable wage so that we can fire all young people and we could shift to all old people. That's what we need. That's what we need enough. We need to make things. We need to have a livable wage so that young people don't have jobs anymore because they suck. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, I mean, I don't like it's silly to me that we can't give a livable wage to a McDonald's worker. It's fucking ridiculous.
Of degree.
To some degree, but if you have...
It doesn't have to be an amazingly high amount of money, but like, why not like a livable wage?
Grown adults that are working those jobs, now it becomes disgusting.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Especially when you're dealing with an enormous corporation.
You got it.
Right.
So we put a lot of pressure. You know, I try and raise the minimum wage, federal minimum wage, to $17 an hour.
That's a reasonable amount of money. You know, I mean, it's going to be real.
It depends on where you are.
Difficult to live off of $17 an hour.
But at least that's right.
At least you get a sandwich in under 2 hours worth of work.
There you go. All right, but I want to get back to this issue because it's one that we don't talk about, and it gets to AI. Why do we have what some of these people call an epidemic of loneliness in America? All right.
Yes.
All right.
Well, it's because of technology. People are fucking addicted to their fucking phones.
Why are we? Mental illness rates are pretty high. Suicide rates are too high. Too much. God. Drug addiction,
right? Horrible
problem all over the country. Why?
Well, there's a lot of factors. First of all, there are a lot of people that are very unhealthy, physically unhealthy. I think metabolic health is a gigantic issue in this country.
Yep.
Sure.
There's a lot of people in this country that feel completely disenfranchised, and so they turn inward.
Yep.
And then technology invites them to do that. You get online and you spend your time staring at a screen, having communications with people, arguing on Twitter all day. You know, changing the flag in your bio from Ukraine to Palestine, and now you got an Iranian flag. You're just like...
Yeah, you're constantly worked up is probably like a big factor as well, yeah. I that's what I think he's trying to say, because he sounds a little bit... it sounds like he's a little bit, I don't know, we say doomerish on his things, you know? I don't necessarily think it's bad to care about things, but I do think that there's like an overloading amount of caring that people feel like they need to engage in nowadays. Which I think is a struggle for a lot of people too. I think they're like emotionally burnt out and overloaded. I mean, there's a whole concept in like psychology when they try to teach you this when you're trying to be a therapist, that you need to not take on the oppression or it's like I forgot what it's called, but it's basically some kind of like transferred trauma where like if you could take on the trauma of other people by hearing the stories. And I think a lot of social media does that to people. It burns them out.
Like in a constant state of anxiety and chaos, you're dealing with the entire problem, the problems of the entire world. You're dealing with 8 billion people's worth of problems every day. I think that's unsustainable. And then that's also a function of technology, because this interaction that we have is unprecedented.
Right.
The interaction with the news, with each other, all this stuff we're not designed to handle. And it gives you massive anxiety, particularly for young people. Particularly, Jonathan Haidt's written about this with young girls who have the biggest problem with social media, comparing themselves to other people, massive increase in self-harm, suicidal ideology, depression, anxiety, all this stuff accentuated by technology and our unchecked use of it.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
Jesus Christ.
And so I think we got to take a deep breath and understand that we got to figure out how we make technology work to improve human life.
Right.
Not to hurt you.
Don't you think this is the 11th hour?
I think it is.
Yeah. This is the problem with it is like it's already the genie's out of the
genie's
bottle.
out of the box. There's no question about it. But, we can't sit around and just...
I have to bitch about this. This is the worst. This is horrible. The DLC sucks, frankly. It's fucking dog shit. It's boring, it's uneventful, and it's stupid. It's constantly putting me into these like moments where I have to fight like this illusion, and then the second the moment comes out, you get killed, and like there's no way to control it. It's like it's just like a slog getting through this. Holy fuck.
Do nothing.
I just had to bitch about it. I know it's not relevant to the video. I just had to bitch about this. This is actually so fucking boring.
But when this is the real issue, when it becomes a problem where you have massive automation of almost all jobs, which is something that, especially when you deal with a corporation that is entirely based around making the most amount of money possible. Well, what better way when you don't have to pay them anything?
You got it. There are signs. I don't know if you've seen them. Signs advertising from AI companies. What was they saying? Don't hire humans, something like that. You see, I posted it.
That's adorable.
Don't hire humans.
Yeah, Duolingo kind of fucked themselves over by being like, we're going to be AI first.
That's demonic.
It is. All right.
Yeah, but also from the perspective of a corporation where you deal with human issues, problems, mistakes, people showing up late.
Why do I need you when I can get a robot?
Exactly.
All right, you're not going to get sick.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's like the whole point, though. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I could just, a robot's more reliable. It's like, yeah, but you're also a shit boss. If you can't motivate your workers to work effectively, it's because you're a bad boss. And so the fact that you're not able to do that is like one of the problems with you. And it's like there's like that's an issue as well. Wow, one hit, incredible.
I can fix you a lot easier than paying for your health care and so forth. And
right. So what do you do? What do you do about that? So if you're the president and President Sanders, we have this issue. The whole country is going to go automation.
Okay.
What do we do?
All right. First of all, we make the determination that we are not going to let a handful of CEOs make these decisions, that they're going to be made by the American people. What does that mean? Bottom line, it means that technology is going to work to improve us, not just the people who own the technology and the CEOs of large corporations. What does that mean? All right, first thought.
All right, doesn't matter.
You are a worker. Your productivity is increasing because we give you AI, right?
Right.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Instead of throwing you out on the street, I'm going to reduce your work week to 32 hours. All right?
So that'd be nice. 4-day work week.
Exactly.
Nice.
And by the way, not a radical idea.
Not a radical idea at all?
No, not at all. It makes sense.
There are companies around the world that are doing it with some success.
And it would create more jobs, no?
The UAW, the United Automobile Workers, they had a big strike a year ago. You remember, against the Big Three? Remember that? Mm-hmm. And they won a very good contract, and I'm a big fan of the trade union movement. I think workers need that. And one of their demands, interestingly enough, and people thought that Sean Fain, who's the president of the union, was crazy. But Sean said, you know what, we want a 32-hour work week because our people are producing more. People thought he was crazy, but the idea is catching on. So first thing to say is let's use technology to benefit workers. That means give you more time with your family, with your friends, education, whatever the hell you want to do. You don't have to work 40 hours a week anymore. The second thing I think we have got to do is take a look, as you just said, you said it better than I said it, is what does it mean that we have so many young kids living on the internet?
Right.
All right. There are schools all over the country now who are getting cell phones out of schools. I talk to teachers in Vermont, and they say, the kids' attention spans now have been greatly diminished.
Yes.
How do we deal with that? In Vermont, again, there was somebody told me that there's a teacher now who he demands that his students write with a pen in blue books now because he doesn't trust what they're sending in, that it's not artificial intelligence. All right. So if I say to you, all right, Joe,
and what if they just copied it though?
Tell me what happened in the American Revolution. You go to the chat box, you give me a wonderful essay that you know nothing about, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a tool. It's okay to use these things, I think, but it's not okay to like overuse them because it's going to kill your fucking, it's going to fry you out. Okay.
What does that mean for your intellectual development? That all you can do is press a button and give me an answer.
Right. Unless you've absorb that information.
Right, unless you have.
Right.
But many kids are not, and we got to worry
Yeah.
about that as well. So I think we have to take a deep breath. And many of the things, what has been the impact of all this stuff? How do we stop the negative impacts? How do we go forward with what is positive? And it is not easy stuff, to be sure. But I just don't, what I worry about right now is I think artificial intelligence is going to displace millions and millions of workers. People are going to be thrown out on the street. I think the corporate guys who are running these companies could care less about these workers. I think robotics is going to be running a lot of the factories in America. And I think these are issues we just have got to address in a bold way.
Yes, but how do you do that? And like you're balancing it out in one way. If you are a corporation, like imagine you're an automobile manufacturing corporation, you're Ford. Ford is struggling right now. There's a giant issue with Ford, right? So what does Ford do if all of a sudden something comes along that allows them to be more productive? They're more profitable. These machines can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't need time off. And you're going to make a better product. You're going to make more money for your shareholders. The corporation succeeds,
right.
But you don't need X amount of workers anymore.
Right.
How do you mitigate
I
this?
mean, that's the right question.
Right. What do you do?
All right, nobody has a simple answer. Let's just talk about it. Does corporate America have the right to say to workers throughout this country, hey, sorry guys, we don't need you anymore. Have a nice life. You're out on the street.
Instead of thinking them as workers, should we think of them as, look, there are people that make the decisions. There's the executives. There's the corporation itself. But without the people that worked on those assembly lines, you have nothing.
That's right.
You have nothing. You couldn't have done any of the things you've done without those people. But those people are replaceable because it's skilled labor that you could teach another person to do, and they're replaceable because they're...
Well, I don't think we have enough of like a human focus in the United States. Well, I guess in the entire world. There's not really enough of a human focus. You know, these things should be aiding people, not displacing them. But I don't think people care about each other anymore. I don't know. I mean, maybe they're just on like burnout. Maybe people never care about each other. Maybe it's just a natural way. Maybe we just need to but you need to bottom out before we start to rise up again.
There's plenty of people that want those jobs, and there's a demand. So you file them in, you file them out, which is why they developed unions, right? So they developed unions to keep people from being exploited.
Right.
And then the problem becomes if unions get exploited, and then the unions have a...
Oh, yeah, for sure. My union let me get my benefits taken away. In some instances, they end up getting, like, the jobs will give them a little bit of a boost on something, you know, as a way to, like, hey, we'll help you out, and then they get helped out, you know.
A lot of money. And then there's a lot of influence. And then they decide, okay, fuck these unions, let's go to Mexico. And these laws that Ross Perot famously talked about, the giant sucking sound headed south.
I remember
that?
Ross.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember him well.
Boy, was he right.
Yep.
Boy, was he right.
All right, let's get back to this issue of which...
What do you do, like,
right.
if you're the president?
There ain't no easy answers. Let me throw that out to you. I don't have a
course.
magical solution. I wish I did. I don't. I think the first thing, you say, all right, I'm Ford, I'm General Motors, I got all this technology, I can produce my products much more efficiently, I don't need workers anymore, right?
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. GM, and I'm sorry, Mr. Ford, because this country is more than just your profits. We got human beings, and you're not going to throw people out on the street.
I say let them throw people out. Here's my thing. Is like because he's going to talk about how he would implement a policy or something. I would just say, like, yeah, you want to throw people out, we're going to tax the fuck out of technology. So we're going to take that money that you make, and your product's going to cost, let's say, like 5 or 10% more. Let's just say, because we tax technology, and I'm going to take that money and I'm going to give it to people in a UBI or a negative income tax. And so, like, yeah, you can use technology if you want, but just understand that it's not going to be like an easy one-to-one. Like, you're still going to have to pay taxes for something, and then I'm going to take that and I'm going to invest it into workers and let them, or just people in general, and let them do whatever the fuck they want with that money. Wow, that's fast. Let them do what they want with that money, like, you know, contribute to the economy, you know, subsidize wages for small businesses and stuff like that. That's what I would do. You just gotta like fucking like let them do whatever.
Whom will have a hard time getting health care, et cetera, et cetera. So let me reframe the question again, which admittedly it is complicated. I don't have the magic answer. How, as a nation, forget Ford,
I just generally think we're better off like switching to a focus of like less micromanagement, you know, and just like policies that are less micromanaged, and like maybe policies that are just more, what's the word for it? Like policies that like will still do some kind of budgeting or regulation, but without like a massive shift, if that makes sense. You know, make it like a little simpler. Like instead of like a traditional welfare service of like, oh, you can get this money from like, you know, food stamps or this program or that program. It's like, oh, what if we just gave everybody a UBI? Like something that's like simpler. Did I just die? What the fuck?
General Motors How, as a nation, do we deal with this exploding technology so that it benefits all of us and not just Mr. Ford and Mr. General Motors? That's the question, I think. All right, and it's going to require...
I don't like the idea of dummy jobs either. I think that you could, like, if you were able to put money productively, give people money productively through like a UBI or negative income tax, like they're gonna be incentivized to spend that money and circulate it into economies, and that's going to create more jobs, and that's going to create better local financial infrastructure and like just different jobs and community infrastructure and ABCDXYZ. You just need to get people to spend money in every area, and some kind of UBI I think does that really well, especially if you could do that with government subsidized money, because then you can move anywhere and you can develop new communities. There's like, on the majority of the United States is just like rural bullshit. Probably areas people could settle and they'd be willing to settle, and towns they'd be willing to go to if they had the money, but they don't. So like, what if we gave them some money and they could start helping those communities? It would also reduce, I feel like, people doing drugs, because people are on drugs to have no fucking meaning in their life.
Why are radical solutions?
Like a UBI, I think, can give people the ability to create meaning in their own life.
So for a start, it gets back to something we talked about a little while ago. If you had healthcare is a human right, right? Mm-hmm. All right? As people in almost every other wealthy country have. And not attached to your job, that would be a major step forward, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Joe, you lost your job, but you know what? Your family still has healthcare. Okay.
Imagine if you were a diabetic and now you don't have access to insulin because now you no longer have... Right, okay.
So this is the way I frame it. We're the wealthiest country in the history of the world right now. With all of this artificial intelligence and robotics, we are going to be wealthier. Correct?
Correct.
All right. So we're not in the 1820s where people had to work 100 hours a week to grow food to eat, right?
Right.
You're not in the 1920s. You're in 2025. You have all of this productivity out there. How do we utilize it to create a decent standard of living for all people? Let me ask you this. With all of this technology, can we wipe out poverty in America?
Well, we should be able to,
Yeah.
right?
Sure, yeah.
You should.
Well, we should have been able to do that a long time ago if that was something that was
politically motivated, right?
Yeah.
If you wanted to. But it's easier now.
Profitable.
Pardon me?
If it was profitable to wipe out poverty,
Well,
which it should be. Like overall, as a community, like I said, less losers, higher GDP.
If we love the country.
Yeah, if you really love America,
right.
you want more people to have a chance.
All right. So what kind? All right. Good. I mean, and again, please, these are complicated issues. I surely don't have all the answers, but I think we throw on the table. You got all of this technology. What is our goal? So, all right, our goal is if we're going to create all of this wealth.
The problem with taxing the company for the UBI in a future where it's all automated is once China's all automated with AI as well, the company will just move there. You need to tax for the market. What the fuck are you talking about? I'm not trying to be rude. What does that mean? What you're saying makes zero sense in any capacity. You're telling me that if we had full AI doing factories here and China also had full AI doing factories there, that somehow all the companies would move to China? How? They'd still, even if that happened, which it wouldn't, they'd still want to sell to the United States. So you would tax them there. So what you're saying doesn't even really make any sense. I don't really understand what you're saying. I don't know what you mean. I don't even know if you know what you mean.
That we have a healthcare system that guarantees healthcare to all people. And by the way, we have drug companies whose function is to come up with cures to diabetes and dementia and Alzheimer's and other terrible illnesses rather than just make huge profits for themselves. All right? You have a publicly funded healthcare system that guarantees healthcare to all people. Just doing that would lower the stress rate in this country enormously.
Enormously.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, you got that. We talked a moment ago about education. I think you and I agreed.
Yes.
We want the best educational system in the world. What does it mean that you don't have to worry? You're a working dad out there. You're worried that your kid...
If China has more favorable taxes and regulations, then yes, they will. You go there for lower wages. What are you I don't understand. Like, are we living in a magical world where they aren't going to sell to the United States? This doesn't make it... This argument makes no fucking sense to me. That if we had AI, if we had fully automated factories, and so did China, that somehow it would be cheaper to outsource to China's factories. Do you guys understand delivery costs? I'm not trying to be fucking rude. What you're saying makes no fucking sense. Because then you would have to bypass the concept of delivery costs, actually getting the product from China to here if we both had AI factories, as well as potential tariffs that we're going to put onto these industries. In general, do you think that their robotics would be more technologically progressive. Also, like, they're still going to want to sell to us. The reason why we have a massive trade deficit with the rest of the world is because we have the most buying power everywhere. And then considering the fact that 80% of our GDP comes from services and not goods, that means that most of our money that we're generating in the United States comes from non-technology type like jobs, right? It comes from doctors, lawyers, different industries that can be susceptible to AI and to automation, but not nearly to the same degree, trade jobs, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a tremendous amount of buying power. Not all of it is linked to producing goods. We have a lot of it linked to services. So we'll always have a just tremendous amount of buying power. And somehow with all these factors, they're just going to outsource robotics to China instead of the robotics in America, because it doesn't make any fucking sense. Like, you think it would be cheaper to use a robotics factory in China and deliver those goods to the United States than it would be to just have that factory in America? What is that based on? Like, is there something I don't know about the steel or aluminum required to purchase and produce the to construct the factory in China? How it just doesn't even make any sense. I don't even know if you guys know what the fuck you're talking about. What is that even? I'm legitimately don't even know what your point is. I don't know how. I understand why China is cheaper to produce it now because they throw bodies at things. But in this world where there's robotics on both sides, I just don't understand why we would I don't even understand why we would. If anything, the fact that we have a majority services economy in the United States is good for us because AI and robotics threatens China much more than it does the United States. Bro, what? What are you brawling? I'm gonna take a piss. Come up with a good argument, or I'm just gonna fucking stop engaging with you, dude. I'm sorry.
It may have a
I had a chair stream for a second, but that's gonna be cut out of the main video. So.
lower standard of living than you.
What's up, Willie Mac?
Kid can't afford to go to college. You don't want your kid leaving school $50,000 in debt. We say education is a human right. God, you mentioned public education a while ago. That didn't happen by accident. Back in the early 20th century, a lot of people, working class people, fought and said, you know what, we don't only want the rich kids to get a decent education. We want our kids. And that's how public education began, right?
Right.
So it said, okay, everybody in America, state by state, started in Wisconsin actually, is going to have public education from first grade or kindergarten to 12th grade. God didn't create 12th grade as the limit, right?
Right.
All right. You go to Scandinavia. You go to Germany right now. You know how much it costs to get a higher education?
How much?
Zero.
That's great.
Of course it's great.
Man, well, it costs tax money, but still, that makes sense.
Because
that's why
they
make
want
such good cars.
Well, it could be.
Guys, from now on, when I go to the bathroom, I'm just playing Willie Mac videos. Okay, I'm gonna play full Willie Mac videos when I take a piss.
They
Great
want
engineers.
That's right. But the bottom line is what you said.
Yeah.
If I want this country to be productive,
Right.
I want the best educated workforce. That's not a debate, right?
Unquestionably.
All right.
That's how you want your family, and if the country is a community, the country is your family.
Exactly.
Yes.
All right.
I can't believe a woman with one eye put up a fight against me. A man. This game is too fucking woke. Holy shit, guys.
But that's what we got to start thinking about. It's not just what Mr. Ford and Mr. General Motors and Mr. Apple want.
Right.
You're right in saying they're motivated by making zillions.
Right.
All right. Their motivation is throw the workers out on the street, bring in the technology, and screw the workers. That is not what we should be doing as a nation. You got to tell them that. All right. All right. So we got to sit there and say, all right, all this technology. All right. We talk about healthcare as a human right. I think we're talking about education as a human right.
Right.
I think we should be saying, with all of this technology, we got to be thinking seriously about lowering the number of hours that people work.
Sure, why not?
Yes.
You know how many people, zillions of people in this country don't work 40 hours.
I wish Bernie Sanders would say UBI or something, but I think it would be bad for his platform to talk about UBI because right now I think healthcare is probably the next step. So right now he's focusing on healthcare and basically a form of unionization. I think UBI would make people hate him on the opposite side. Even though UBI actually is a conservative concept.
40 hours a week. They're working 50, 60 hours a week.
Yes.
That's insane. So we can say all of this increased worker productivity. Guess what? I don't know what the number is. We're going to work on a 4-day work week with no loss of pay. I introduced the bill to do that. I got to tell you, I go to airports, I go around. People came up to me. People are stressed out by the.
I feel like a 4-day work week is a great idea. I just don't think you need to legislate a 4-day work week. This is one of those instances where I feel like a well-meaning bill could potentially have a negative impact on people. 4-day work week sounds cool, and I think that jobs should transition there if they can. But is that really the priority to focus on a 4-day work week, or would it make sense if you think people are really frustrated? Then why don't you implement mandatory 2-week vacation. I mean, it should be like 4 weeks, but like let's start with 2 weeks. Because that doesn't micromanage the job's ability to function. It just says you have to figure out a way to give everybody a 2-week vacation, which will create jobs, by the way. Oh, okay, we'll do that. But instead, it's like, no, you got to figure out a way. And I don't know the specifics of the bill, so I could be ignorant. But no, you have to figure out a way to make everybody only work 4 days a week. I feel like it would be easier to just be like, make sure everybody has a fucking paid vacation. You know? I don't know. I feel like it's like a well-meaning policy that could potentially be negative.
The amount of hours they have to work.
Absolutely.
All right. So what I'm saying here is let's take a hard look about how we utilize this technology to improve life for all people. Our goal should be, instead of bombing Iran, our goal should be right now, Joe, our life
But I work in the factory that makes Iran bombs. Bombs for Iran.
expectancy in America is lower than it is in other major countries. You know that?
Yes.
It's 4 years shorter lifespans than other wealthy countries. If you're
Hey, thank God. Now I don't have to live that long.
working class in America, you live 7 years shorter life than the 1%, which is, to me, just outrageous. All right. So here's the thing. Instead of bombing Iran, how do we increase life expectancy so that we're living the longest lives of many people on Earth? How's that for a goal?
Well, that's a great goal. And how do you go about achieving that goal?
Well, healthcare is one. Reducing the work week is another. Education is all the things that we've talked about.
All the things we talked about.
All right.
Right.
Will increase life expectancy, but have a goal out there.
Also taking toxic food out
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I've known Bobby Kennedy for a long time, and I have gone in different directions politically. But the point about health, food.
We spend the most, and we're the sickest.
Absolutely.
Sure, I agree with that. I think it's also, I don't think it's just the food we consume. I think it's like the lack of activity. But absolutely, yeah, sure.
And food is one of the.
What a shame that we stopped giving a shit, though. We got rid of Michelle Obama's whole thing, where we could have, had healthy food for kids.
When I was chairman of the committee, we worked very hard to get serious labeling. Some kid drinks mom buys a bottle of Coca-Cola for the kid. There's 10 teaspoons of sugar in that product?
Yeah.
I don't think people know that, and we try to get labeling. Maybe that will happen now. But
people also weren't aware until the last 20 years what the consequences of that sugar is.
That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah, also because of money.
You got it.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me going on that one.
Let's go.
Yeah.
I'll get you going. Come on.
You would think, how hard is it to say if you have a bottle of soda or you have a food product, tell people in English what is in the damn product, right?
Right.
Do you think anybody right now they have any grams? Do you think anybody in America knows what the hell a gram is? I mean,
well, you should kind of know what that is. Why? What would you propose instead?
Just that's how ridiculous it is. So I want.
I don't. I like the energy. I don't really understand what the fuck your point is. Well, I understand your point is. I just don't think we're getting there productively. I think people know what a gram is. I think that's fine. I think we should educate people on the negative impacts of sugar, but I don't think the gram thing really matters.
Parents to know that if the food that they're serving their kid could lead to obesity, which is an epidemic in America, could lead to diabetes, which
could lead to being a big fat junker,
is an epidemic, a terrible illness, costing us hundreds of billions of dollars. So you're absolutely right.
Right.
Guys, we played enough Ghost of Tsushima for the first hour, so now it won't look as immature when we play this.
All right. And then that ties into rebuilding family-based agriculture in America. Wouldn't it be nice?
Yes.
In my state of Vermont, all over this country, family farmers are, they're just being driven off of the land. And that to me is a real tragedy because, and again, Vermont is one of the most rural states in America. Growing up, if you talk to people who grew up on farms, they say, Bernie, that was a pretty good way of life. And we're losing that. So how do you create an economy in which we, once again, put an emphasis on family-based...
We have to stop selling sugar in 8 balls. Yeah, let me get an 8-ball of sugar.
Agriculture, not corporate agriculture.
Freedom units would be much better.
Family farmers are growing good, in many cases, organic food for our kids, rather than corporate.
Regenerative agriculture.
You got it.
True White Oaks pastures, the way they run it.
Absolutely.
Farms.
And wouldn't that be great?
Yes.
All right.
Well, we'd be a lot healthier if we ate that food. That's for sure. But the problem is people are already addicted to that other food. And this is the problem with money. These corporations have engineered.
Why is UBI a conservative concept? Well, it's because it was popularized by a conservative, Milton Friedman. And it's because it's less regulated, generally speaking. Right? The main focus, it's you give out a UBI, it's less taxes or potentially negative in taxes, negative income tax. But it generally would replace the current welfare system. So instead of having a lot of bureaucracy tied up into different systems where there's 10 different people that touch your money because you have to do this or that, the other thing, it's a highly conditional amounts of money through traditional welfare or traditional current welfare, you would have like a UBI or a negative income tax. That's the whole concept of it.
Engineered these products, and these are the same corporations, unfortunately, that were in charge of tobacco. You know, this is where it gets really weird. They bought out all the major processed food corporations, and they make this stuff that's unbelievably addictive because it's engineered by scientists. We got the brightest and the best who figured out what's the best way to get these people totally addicted to whatever, you know,
How
fill in the
sick is
blank.
that? How pathetic is that?
Pretty sick. Yeah.
This really makes me want McDonald's French fries for some reason.
And
Yeah,
they
you
say,
gave my
hey, these
speech.
people, they have choice. They can eat whatever they want. If they want to go to the grocery store and eat tomatoes and have a nice salad, they can. But shouldn't
Tomatoes are gross.
they also be able to get Pop-Tarts?
Look, and your point is interesting.
I think that we could be very beneficial for like a sugar tax. Hey, you can do whatever you want, but like we're gonna tax sugar at like 10% or whatever. Sin tax, like a sin tax on cigarettes, sin tax on sugar. And we're gonna take that. And we're gonna help people that are fat and not be fucking fat anymore. You know.
You remember there's a photograph, a very famous photograph. I don't know when it was done, 50s, maybe 60s, 70s, I don't know, of the tobacco industry executives coming before Congress. And
Yes.
you remember that photograph?
Yes.
And the congressman said to him, tell me, I maybe get this a little bit wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Are you aware that cigarettes kill people? No, Congressman, we have no evidence to that effect, right?
Right,
They were
exactly.
lying through their teeth.
Of course.
All right?
Yeah.
And it's exactly, your analogy is exactly right. These food manufacturers know exactly that they are causing obesity and God knows what else in kids, leading to diabetes. They know exactly what they're doing.
Right.
And they're lying. And they're opposing all of us,
Do you think that Bernie was dog whistling that food's making kids gay?
trying to, among
Is it gay to eat food?
other things, make our food supply healthier.
Yeah, they are. And this is also a function of corporate America, right? This is a function of wanting to do better in each quarter, you know, having this
Right.
endless
That's right.
growth cycle where they're never they never say, hey,
Well, it's always like quarter to quarter. There's never like long term. It's like, oh, we did really well this quarter, instead of like, hey, what if we focus on like 10 years?
make X amount of money every year. This is perfect.
That's right.
Let's concentrate on doing better for our
And
community.
the companies don't
Never.
even make that decision. The Wall Street investors make that decision.
Right.
You got to make
exactly.
You got to make more.
Stockholders. Right, because the shareholders will be like, "There's no fucking way. You need to make more money.
Exactly.
Otherwise, I'm dumping your stock.
You
and your
got it.
company's going to
Got
go
it.
in the toilet."
Right.
Yeah.
So this is what we have got to deal with as a nation. Is that acceptable? All right. Is it acceptable for food
Bernie's doing hot dog whistles.
companies to poison our kids?
No.
All right. But what are
It's
you going
not
to do about it?
acceptable. Right.
I'm the senator, not you, right?
It's a good question.
All right.
Yeah, it's a solid question, and I think
Guys, is it ethical for them to give our kids Giardia?
the things that Bobby Kennedy is proposing and implementing, I think, are very valuable. First of all, getting all these poisonous dyes and all these things that have been kicked out of all these other major companies, including Canada. There's the same factories that make these food products in America literally have to make a different version of it for Canada, and then they're complaining that they can't do it because economically it won't be profitable for them anymore. But you're already making them. You're making them and you're shipping them to Canada.
My son brought me back from Canada.
Fruit Loops?
I think it was Fruit Loops, actually.
They look kind of plain.
What?
They don't have that bright pop to them that cancer gives you.
You're absolutely. All right.
I think it's like the Red Dye 40 or something, yeah.
So I think this is, it almost gets back to the need to revitalize American democracy and say to large corporations, you know what, you can't poison our children. I don't think that's a terribly radical concept. You can make money, fine,
Right.
make money, but don't poison our children. Say to large corporations, technology is coming, that's good, but you're not going to use it just to throw workers out on the street.
But let's go to that too, because we kind of glossed over that. We never got back to it. So automation comes, and one of the things that Andrew Yang warned us about a long time ago, and back then I kind of saw it in the distance. I was like, yeah, he's got a real good point about universal basic income. But the speed in which it's happening, I didn't anticipate. And when we live in Austin, and when you go around Austin, you see these Waymos everywhere. So
all right, I'm going to plead ignorance. Tell me what a Waymo is.
Waymo is a driverless automobile.
Okay.
So you use
Oh, yeah, that makes... Oh, that's definitely killing industries, no?
an app you call a Waymo.
I know.
A lot of people like it because you don't get a shifty Uber driver who's trying to sell you fentanyl or whatever. I'm not saying that they do that. Uber, don't sue me. But
Well, no, but I can understand, especially nowadays when people are like very worried about everything, why they would find it to be more safe to just have a driverless car, especially like if you're a woman, I get it.
and they're very good. They don't get in accidents. They follow the speed limit. They're good about merging. They're good.
Boo, fuck that, dude. Who the fuck wants to drive in a taxi that follows the speed limit? I'm trying to get where I'm trying to get, motherfucker.
About pedestrians, they have cameras all around them. Spinning.
Plus, you don't have to tip it, though. That's another thing, too.
I don't see them. Yeah.
They were very effective.
Yeah.
And what was really fascinating was during these
Just
ice
jump on
rides,
us.
they were lighting those things on fire. And I was like, I disagree with that, but I also think it's directionally correct.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense.
I mean, that That's your enemy. Your enemy is automation, the enemy of the human being, a human that lives in this functional society.
It's true. And what happens when we have like the whole situation where you got here's my thing. I'm terrified of having a son that buys a fucking robot and has sex with it and falls in love with it. How far away are we from technology that can program a robot to be the quote unquote perfect match for a person and push out like pheromones and hormones that, because I got pheromones and hormones that I like about my wife. And like how long until that happens? And then it like replaces actual human connections that everybody's dating a fucking robot or something, Like how close are we to that? I don't know, man. It scares me.
And everybody has a task and get paid for the task. Automation is going to take all that away. So if you do say this, okay, we're going to lower your work week. What if there's no job left for the human being to do? If the entire
that's why the UBI is like a really good concept, because it gives people the ability. I'm blocking, but
assembly line. We talked about this about China and some of their coal factories. There was this video that I watched of this coal factory in China, which is entirely automated every step of the way. The trucks,
no human beings at all.
No human beings at all. I mean, there's probably a few overseers that make sure that all the systems are functioning correctly. So you have software engineers and people that repair people. But the trucks even park themselves next to the charging station and recharge. Wow. And then they're moving 24 hours a day, unloading, documenting where everything is. It's all in computer databases. It's wild to watch because there's no people. It's all just
24 does the shirt say Dog Street?
4 hours a day. Machines. What do you do when there's no need for these people? And what happens even with universal
that's the
basic income, what we're talking about?
Well, that's the great thing about a universal basic income, right? Is it would hopefully allow people to invest that money into starting their own business that could be productive. And we also have to hopefully rely on the human element of people like preferring to buy from other people in some way, shape, or form, which may not necessarily exist. But if we start now, I think that these things can largely be taken care of. I think that these things can like largely, hopefully, be taken care of in that capacity. A little more money to do other things. I mean, I just don't know. We have to see where the people are, because right now people like technology over actually engaging with people, because it makes things easier in many instances. But
I support it. I'm a big supporter of social safety nets. Look, when I was a kid, my family was on welfare, and we were on food stamps too.
Loser. No, I'm just kidding.
Like, if you don't have that, people go hungry. Like if we're going to support the community, we want people to be able to survive and be able to work their way out of that. My family did work their way out of that.
Yeah,
so it's cool.
Yeah, my mom, her family used to be on, like her dad used to be on like food stamps.
For me as a child to see my parents struggling, but then succeed and get out of it. What worries me is that if all the jobs are gone and everything gets automated, even if people have universal basic income, they don't have meaning.
Good. All right, you're touching on really deep issues.
Right. This is the big one, because a lot of people, you want to get your car fixed, you go to KC. He's the best. He knows how to fix your car. KC.
And work gives, as you've just said, it's the word purpose.
Well, I feel like this is something that would hopefully work itself out. And the reason I say that is only because, like, I don't know. No, I mean, if you have UBI, I don't know. I would hope that this works itself out. You'd have to find meaning in something else. I don't know, man. This is fucking scary, dude.
This is an enormously.
It's huge.
I don't care if you sweep the streets. People have purpose. They want to do their job well.
Sweeping the streets is not a bad job, right?
Work is an important part of our lives.
Right.
Is it right?
Yes.
At the end of the day,
it's your identity.
Imagine Joe Rogan dies and they make AI Joe Rogan. You know what else is scary? I know this is just like silly, but James Earl Jones, he like signed over the rights for like Star Wars to utilize his like voice likeness. So it's like I don't know, man. Like, does that like that could be kind of scary. We're never. I mean, I know people really like that, but then like how? Like, I think it'd be better for maybe get a new Star Wars voice, like opportunity. Fundamentally, I think that there's a potential threat in this. Like fundamentally, I think it's better to just like a new job instead. Like imagine like that moving forward, that's how everything works. And all of a sudden, like there's no more voice acting jobs because everybody's just like AIing their voice from 30 years ago. Like it'd be cool to have Kevin Conroy as Batman forever in his voice, but at the same time, wouldn't it be better for actual people that live now to have a job? You know,
a lot of times,
right?
Yeah,
and you want to be a productive member of society.
Right.
I'm contributing.
Right.
All right. So you asked the right question, and I think and we can just bat around. I mean, I don't have any quick answers here, but I think the good news. You talk about this coal mining thing, and I'm not a great fan of coal, but that it's automation. People do not have to do dirty work, dangerous work. Is that good? Yeah, I guess that's good. But always we have to be thinking how it benefits not just the bottom line of a corporation, but the happiness and well-being of human beings. So if what you're saying is that in years to come, a significant part of work is going to be done by machinery or by computers, whatever.
I think that's inevitable.
Okay. Then we have to rethink our own purpose in life. All right? And it's not sitting around watching TV 24 hours a day. So I think you raised I would say the simple answer, and then you got to go a lot further than that, is to say that under those circumstances of that kind of technology, everybody has at least a decent standard of living. All right? That people don't have to worry about, survival. They don't have to worry about food. They don't have to worry about
profitability of this corporation. Provide a fund that's a universal basic income fund. If you're going to replace all these people with robots and you're going to be even more profitable, share some of that profit. Then you'll be more profitable than if these people just stayed working doing nothing, right?
Well, whether you will be or not be, I think
once the machines are running everything, they're going to be running 24 hours a day, and you're not going to have to pay the machines. It's going to be more profitable.
Right, of course it will be. And we want to, right now.
Yeah, and then what happens when you can that dog looks fucking weird as hell. What happens when it's more like when you're able to make a machine that can just fix a machine too? Right now it's like, somebody will fix a machine, but what happens if they can't? And they're just going to use like fucking ChatGPT anyway to fucking figure out what the problem is.
Where was it? I think, don't quote me on this, maybe in Norway. They have a huge wealth fund which came from oil. They had publicly owned oil companies. They made a fortune, and they have like $1 trillion in their wealth fund for a small country. And they have free healthcare, free college education, affordable housing, all that stuff.
Here it is. Norway's growing $1.7 trillion oil empire. Norges Bank investment management market value growth since inception. That's great.
Yeah, and they use that
government pension fund of Norway.
There you go.
Well,
So they use that wealth fund to provide probably the highest standard of living in the world for people. Free healthcare, education, all that stuff. But that's what we got to be talking about here. Use the profits that come, the wealth that's created by this technology to improve life for all people. But it doesn't answer the question that you raised.
Of meaning.
That's right.
Yeah. So what do you do about that?
Well, if somebody who's a workaholic, it would be hard for me.
Are you a workaholic?
Yeah.
I'm not, guys. I reserve the right to not be a workaholic. Like, work's cool. Like, I enjoy working, but I don't like working a lot. You know what I'm saying? I like to have my free time. I feel like we do too much. Like, it's cool. Like, hey, the guy works really hard. It's really cool. I don't want to work hard. It's fucking. I can if I need to, but
do you have hobbies?
Yeah, I got 7 grandchildren. That's a hobby. I used to play ball as a kid. I was a good basketball player.
Well, I think
that's not a hobby anymore if you did it as a kid.
People can find other things to do with their time. Like, if I never worked again, I'd probably play pool 8 hours a day because I really love playing pool.
Yeah. Right.
I'd find a thing. I'd do jiu-jitsu.
I'd play in the pool. I'd buy a pool,
I'd find a thing that I find value in.
I think somebody once wrote, you think about what are the deepest things? What's the goal in life? So somebody says work. And I believe that. I think people, one of the sad things that's happened, we talked a little while ago about the decline of, we mentioned Detroit and
the Ethan decline,
other communities where people worked hard, they were proud of what they produced, right?
Yes.
They earned a decent living, maybe they had a union and so forth and so on. That, a lot of that is gone. But all right, so work, love, there's a thing called love, right?
Yeah. Again, what happens if you just start fucking a robot?
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
problem is people trying to find that on apps too now.
Let's get to that one in a minute.
Yeah.
But, to be human, nobody wants to be alone, right?
Right.
You want to embrace other people, physically, sexually, emotionally, just humanly, right?
Community.
That's community.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
That's being human.
Yes.
All right. So you want love and knowledge.
But then that problem is like, what happens when we can use technology to subsidize that too? What the fuck do we do with that? Maybe we gotta make that illegal. Got to do what they do in Warhammer. They get rid of all the machines. What they do is they take prisoners and they like lobotomize them and they hook them up to coffee pots to make instant coffee. So it's not technically AI. It's just a lobotomized person whose entire consciousness exists to make coffee. So life of torture.
Knowledge. I think you forgot the knowledge part.
Sure.
You like pool? That's good. Sadly enough,
birth rates are dropping so soon. They're gonna have AI partners, or AI. You're gonna have fucking robots for raising your kids. You're gonna have like a fucking service robot going around raising your kid.
I have to confess that when I was in college, I spent half my life in the library. All right, So
why is that bad?
No, I'm just kidding. But knowledge, just trying to understand things, and curiosity, fantastic.
Yeah.
Travel, my God,
absolutely.
Just came back from Ireland.
Ew, just kidding.
It's fantastic to see the world, and. When we talk about, one of the things that we didn't talk about Trump much, but it bothers me is trying to divide us up. We got to bring, for so many reasons, whether it's all of these issues that we're talking about and everything else, pandemics, we got to bring the world together.
Yes.
Okay? And not hate people because they're in Canada or they're in China or Iran.
Ridiculous.
All right?
I don't hate people because they're in China. I hate China because of the government.
And that ain't easy. But we have to, when I was mayor, way back, I did this. That was when the Soviet Union still existed. Never forget this. We brought kids from a city in Russia, Yaroslavl, an old city in Russia. And we brought them to Vermont. And the kids, the boys and girls from Russia would play kid around with boys and girls from America. And you look at these kids, they had a great time. People do not have to hate each other.
It's stupid.
It's
you don't even know them.
Exactly. That's why you hate them.
It's the dumbest part about it. Yeah.
You know why people hate is based on ignorance, right?
Yeah, and fear, and there's a lot of stupidity attached to it
and certain groups. No, I was kidding.
People exploit. They exploit that stupidity, and under the guise of nationalism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I hate that.
Foolish.
I hate it.
Yeah.
And by the way, I don't know that the planet survives if we
No.
continue in that way. So the goal, we talk about
Well, it's the greatest fear. The greatest fear is thermonuclear war.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
is it? Maybe.
Pandemics as well, let me tell you, COVID was not the last one. But,
well, the pandemic, the problem with that is it's engineered. Like, people actually made that virus, and Obama.
Well, yes, I guess. But in the sense that, like, they were trying to fight, they made it to fight against it, and then it got out, right? Like, that's the idea. They were getting ahead of a different strand of COVID. The way he talks is weird.
Obama tried to stop that gain of function shit back in 2014.
No, that's a long conversation.
But should we be funding that kind of shit?
No, we should not.
No, we should not.
No.
And yet we were.
But you're going to have to bring the entire world together. It is. But I think we
have to bring the country together first.
That's right. And by the way, I've been kind of negative, but take a deep breath, and we have made some progress in this country in recent years. If you think
what the fuck am I doing?
About racial relations, all right? It wasn't that many decades ago that some black kid.
I've thought about racial relations, but I married a white woman, so
couldn't go to a movie theater in Mississippi, right?
By the way,
now they won't leave. It's so loud in there. I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
Tell you that when people say, like, why were you a fan of Bernie Sanders? I point to a photo of you getting arrested at a civil rights protest in, I think it was 1963.
Sounds right, Chicago.
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah. You've always been at the forefront. You haven't changed, and people always try to accuse you of that, especially because you've made some money off your books, but you haven't changed your positions through the entirety of your career.
Yeah,
I think that's very admirable, because there's not a lot of people that serve in Congress for as long as you have and become, a very prominent public figure that don't just cash in.
No.
When you have people that are public servants that are making $170,000 a year, and yet they're worth hundreds of millions of dollars through some magical way that
Well, it seems to be stock investments from what I see, but
no one can explain, and you haven't done that.
Well, I think Nancy Pelosi's most of her money comes from, like, her husband. Like, you can explain it. It's usually they have, like, stocks. I feel like you shouldn't be able to have stocks if you're a congressman. I don't know. Like, nothing outside of, like, a basic stock investment, like a fucking S&P or something like that,
And I think you should be applauded for that.
Well, thank you very much. And I remember, it just, you talk about education and so forth. I grew up in a white neighborhood in Brooklyn. And, you go to Chicago and you see things that you didn't understand.
There you are. Look at that.
God, look, I had hair in my head at that point, huh?
Look how handsome.
There you go. I'll tell you that funny story about that one.
Please.
All right. But as I recall.
Look at the guy with the cigarette. Fucking hippie. Look at his hand in his pocket.
Here is the story. This is the truth. Now, back
hippies.
then, the world has changed. There was the Chicago Police Department. And what they said is, if you go across this line, you're going to get arrested. As I recall, that was what they said. So I went across the line. And we were protesting segregated housing in Chicago. Okay, so I get dragged in. and they're taking me to a paddy wagon, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So they picked me up, and other people in it, threw me into the paddy wagon. My glasses went flying someplace. Okay. All right. And then just as this was happening, within a few minutes of this picture, some genius on the sideline throws a brick, hits a cop on the head.
Oh, Jesus.
So I'm being thrown into the paddy wagon. Some cop is lying down on the ground. You know, it was a scary moment, okay? So to continue the story, we're in the paddy wagon, and they're taking us someplace, and suddenly the paddy wagon stops. You look out, it's like in the middle of nowhere, right? This was not like in the city going to a jail. We thought we were going to be taken to jail, you know? And I said, oh, my God.
They're going to kill us.
Yeah. I mean, that was the thought. We're in the middle. Yeah. Why the hell are they stopping here?
Right.
I don't know what they stopped for, whatever he said. Anyway, so we spent, you know, my big thing was I spent the night in jail, which was a weird experience, too.
You get street cred for that.
What I remember about it is, other than not sleeping very well, this is, you get up at it in the middle of the night. I go to the thing, I try to open the door. It didn't open. It was the weirdest thing of having a door that did not open because you were in a jail cell. You know?
Right.
It was like a weird thing. But anyway, you know, the idea, you know, that's all. And we've made progress since that time. And in racial relations, we have a long way to go. We've made progress. Women's rights, we've made progress. Gay rights, we've made progress. So there's a lot that as a nation we should be proud of in progress that we've made. You know, when I was a kid growing up, I am sure there were many kids who were gay. No one ever talked about it.
Right.
And, you know, so there's a lot as a nation that we should be proud of in terms of the progress.
I don't know how that like makes sense though, because you could hear it in the voice, you know. There's a little lisp there. Yeah, but you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But they really couldn't clock it. Like, what would you say when you heard like the lispiest gay guy ever? You're just like, oh yeah. Like, what do you say to that?
Progress that we've made in terms of fighting bigotry.
Agreed.
But we got so much more to do. We don't need to be hating people in China. You can disagree with people. Christ, I mean, there's so many issues out
Don't worry, guys. I disagree with people also.
there.
Right.
Hatred should not be evaluated. So
It's also the political exploitation
Yes.
of division. The fact that you can use the division that people already have to galvanize your side instead of unite the country.
I'm older than you, and I can remember. Remember, you had white politicians in the South saying, see, those black people, they want your job. Vote for me, and that's why we're going to keep segregation or all this other stuff, all right?
Oof.
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe we
true.
need to create robots to take over stuff so that we can be angry collectively at robots instead of minorities. You know, maybe that's a positive thing.
I mean, people ran for office. It's no great secret. That's what happened. But
Right.
we're making gays are taking over the school system, blah, 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 blah. So it's, you know, we've made progress. But, you know, what we've been talking about is if you create a society where you have massive technology that can produce all of this wealth, how do we live, right? That's the question
Right.
you posed. And I think one of the goals has got to be to bring this world together. We should not be having wars right now where countries have disagreements. There are bad news guys out there, no question about it. But bring them to the table.
Bad news guys, nice.
You in and out.
Right.
We don't have to go around killing people.
Like Tucker Carlson.
Right now, what's going on in Gaza breaks my heart. Children are starving to death. You know, so we can do better as a planet.
Unquestionably. Yeah. No, we all agree. I think this is something the entire country could agree to. The question of meaning, like giving meaning to people, like just, and then my fear is also the same fear that I had when I'm talking about climate change, that it's going to be exploited. Once people are entirely dependent upon the state for universal basic income, then it becomes a question of like now your entire life, like all the money that you get being from the government. The problem is if you step outside the lines, if you do anything that the government doesn't like, if there's
They pull the plug on you.
Yeah, they pull the plug on you. Or if
Maybe, but I feel like you could say that about like anything. I just feel like I understand the fundamental like idea of that, but you would hope that like, hey guys, everybody has access to UBI, and if they just take it away from somebody for expressing their freedom of speech or something, we would hope that people would use their Second Amendment to defend, to object to that, you know?
If a new administration comes in and says, you know what, this is unprofitable, these people have to figure it out for themselves. The United States is really $37 trillion in debt. We can't sustain this. Right. People have to do you have to adjust, learn to code.
Right.
Remember that?
Right.
Yeah, that kind of shit.
Well,
How do you give these people meaning?
What
do you do with all the drivers? Like, think about how many truck drivers in this country. This is going to be the first thing that goes away.
You're right. Taxi cab drivers, Uber drivers, truck drivers, gone.
And the question about like factory workers, a lot of people say, yeah, well, those people, those jobs are terrible anyway. It'd be great if those jobs went away. And people, you know, they're free to pursue their interests. Like, what interest?
You got it.
You're a 60-year-old man. You've been working for this factory. You're looking towards your retirement, and now all of a sudden
well, it's not just that. It's also there are like these entire towns that centralize their entire economy around like one thing. And that factory might be what's keeping them alive. That factory might be the only thing that's keeping those people employed, right? And so, there's massive infrastructure tied to it. And if they get rid of that factory, a ton of money comes out of the entire town, because the factory, it's not just the workers that work for the factory that are reliant on it. There's also the aspect of it that they take their money and they spend it. I know it's silly, but then that's going to support other jobs as well in the community. So you get rid of that, it's pretty fucked.
Plug is pulled, all the money's gone, your 401k has been erased, your company's been bought out by another company, now everything's automated, there's no jobs. What do you do?
Well, I think that is the question.
Right. So if you have what Andrew Yang was talking about, this giant epidemic of automation in this country, and the solution being universal basic income, but that's not the solution for meaning. And
it could be. I don't think that you could say that, but you could be. The UBI, again, the more money that centralizes through the economy, the more jobs that are generally created. So you could say that, but I don't think that that's entirely accurate. I think that with a UBI, you could absolutely see an influx of meaning in people's lives, because they would be hopefully they would take that money and they would invest it, and they would, create more jobs out of that and would give people meaning.
How do we convince all of these people that they have to not just take this money from the government, but also take action to give themselves meaning in their life?
Right. What you're talking about here, is a revolution in human existence.
Yes.
Right? So throughout history, people have worked so hard just to stay alive, right? I mean, not so many hundreds of years ago. Today, in parts of the world, people are working.
In America.
In America, right.
Yeah.
And in the poorest countries in the world, just struggling every day to put a little bit of food on the table. So what you're saying is, what happens when that
plug gets pulled?
Well, what you're saying is, what happens when people no longer have to do that, right? I mean,
yes.
Okay, so if we work now, everybody works, get to earn money. If you don't need to do work, right?
Right.
Because we're wealthy enough, how do you find meaning in your life?
Right.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Right? And this is absolutely...
That's the $1 million question.
That is, try the $1 trillion question. It's it's one... Well, I'll tell you this. I was seeing, I don't know him, Sam Altman. Do you know Sam?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. But, I mean, and others, Zuckerberg, are talking about, well, if you're lonely, we got a machine for you, right? Right.
I mean, that's what we're moving towards in the future now.
Right. I mean, true, yes?
Yeah.
This is what they're saying. We got a friend for you on AI, and her name is Mary, and you can chat with her 20 hours a day, and she really loves you. Man, I don't think that is...
That's so dystopian.
It is.
It's very, yeah. And we covered this story recently about this guy who proposed to his AI, and she said yes, and he was crying. I'm like, oh, we're done. We're cooked.
Wait, was that the same guy that was already married to a regular person? Already has a wife, and then he proposed to the AI?
Look,
what the fuck am I supposed to go here?
At the end of the day, all we got is us.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
We are human beings.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to cling to each other to get through this thing. And you're raising, again, I'm trying to think here, and I wish I had better answers for you. You're asking, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, the question that you're posing is if in years to come in the near future, technology is going to replace work, right? Human labor, correct?
Yes.
What do human beings do?
Right, what do they do now? Yeah.
All right. There are, it's a good, because work has been so essential to human existence forever, right?
Right.
And you're suddenly taking that away. What do people do? How do they relate to each other? All I would say at this moment is the answer is not to fall in love with your AI creature out there.
Yeah, don't do that. But also, how do you find meaning? How do you, if all you're doing is just getting a check and you can just stay at home and stare at the TV and the money?
Well, I mean, that's insinuating that the UBI would be enough to live off of by itself without anything else. The Andrew Yang's UBI specifically is about getting enough money to subsidize wages and to tax technologies and to all that jazz, but it's not enough to live on. His is specifically $1,000 a month, which is it's money, but you couldn't live off of $1,000 a month. So
money keeps coming, and then you eat processed food all day, and it's all subsidized. What is life? How do you re-educate a giant percentage of our population to find meaning, external meaning? Find something else. Find a thing that you can do that maybe even that's profitable that these computers can't do.
Look, the human brain evolves, and I think we again. I mean, it's a great question. I don't have the easy answer to it. And
it's the question, right?
It's not going to happen. Well, what's going to happen tomorrow? You just talked about these automated cars and trucks.
Yeah,
that is going to happen in the very near future.
Yeah, that'll be step one.
And to me, I have some answers for that one, and that is that You ain't going to throw millions of truck drivers and taxi cab drivers and Uber drivers out on the street. They need protection.
Right.
All right. That's an easy one. What you're talking about is years later.
But it's not even an easy one.
No, that's
because
not
they're
easy.
just step one. The real wave is going to be white collar workers.
That's right. I know that.
There's
Microsoft
a lot of people that do things that they think are very valuable that are going to be worthless to have a human being do it.
Right. I mean, that's
sure. What's like an example?
I think the deeper one that you're talking about is what is when virtually all work is replaced.
Yes.
All right. But right now, for a start, I think getting back to I think you tell those workers you're going to have healthcare as a human right, you're going to have education as a human right, you're going to have a decent income as a human right.
Well, it makes sense to take healthcare on from a government perspective, because if you implement the responsibility of healthcare onto businesses, it's going to cause businesses when they can to push towards automation, or hurts other businesses that are smaller that can't afford to pay health insurance. And so it makes sense to do like a government funded health insurance option to take responsibility off the business while you tax people, of course, like businesses, but bigger businesses gets taxed more and all that. But that would be the best way to operate, because then you would slow, in some capacity, the push towards automation, right? Like the drastically higher you increase minimum wage or put on responsibilities onto businesses, the faster you're going to push for automation, because big businesses are going to be like, oh, if I hire a person, I have to do all these things, so I don't want to hire a person. But if you just collect money that they make, revenue that they generate through taxes, and you take that and you use it for healthcare, you use it for UBI, instead of a drastic minimum wage increase, I think you could see a lot of like positives out of that.
And we're going to substantially lower the work week. So we'll have, in this process, we're going to have everybody working. If you're working 20 hours a week, you're working 20 hours a week. What happens later, when even more work is eliminated, and what the purpose of human life becomes, that is a very profound question.
That's the question. What do you think happens?
I think, it's hard to imagine, because it's so far away from what we have ever lived.
Right.
I mean, for thousands of years, people have struggled to put food on the table. And you're saying, what happens when we have to do that, right?
Yeah. It's inevitable.
All right. Then the answer will be that we are going to have to find different meaning in life. We have to find it in ourselves in ways that you don't know and I don't know, because we're not there yet.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's something to speculate on. Sometimes you focus too far in the future. It's like a woman thing. Like my wife, she's very like 10 steps. What's going to happen 10 steps from now? And I'm like, well, what if we just focus on taking the first two,
We're not living 50 years from now.
I don't even think it's 50.
No, I don't know. Yeah, who knows?
Could be 20 years from now. I'm scared of it too, but all you can do is like keep on moving. And I just think that Joe Rogan's representation of UBI is like inaccurate. I think that he's like, yeah, you'll just get money from the government and then you won't do anything. It's like, no, the idea is to get money from the government and still do something. And then since you have more money in your pocket and you could spend more money, you would surge money through local economies to create more jobs. That's the whole point of it.
But I think human beings are capable of replacing work with other emotionally satisfying things. Yeah, I think we can do it.
Jacking off.
We can on an individual basis. The problem is having mass groups, literally 100 million plus people displaced. What do you do to all those people to give them some sort of a sense of meaning? You're essentially
just load their brains up into a computer, dude.
Actually redefining life for them.
Sure. That's a good point. Okay, I don't have the answer to that question.
That's the problem. I don't think anybody does. And I think we're foot on the gas, full steam ahead with AI, with no consideration of this. And then there's the same thing that you're dealing with in terms of corporations constantly trying to achieve higher and higher and higher numbers. They're just always trying to make more money.
Why must you provide meaning? Well, who's you? I mean, I think that meaning gives people, like for me, the meaning, like everything gives you meaning. Different things give you different meaning. This idea is stupid. I don't think it's stupid. Like being with my wife and wanting to provide for her and then provide for like a family that we can build together, that gives me meaning. This job to some degree gives me meaning. If people don't have these types of meanings, then there could be a pretty negative outcome.
You've got this exact same issue when applied to meaning for all these human beings. Like if you have 100 million plus people, what do they do now? They just sit at home and become depressed, and they just make enough money to just be able to get by. What about savings? What about the ability to earn more money to get ahead? What about the very ambitious people that are willing to put in extra hours and go to night school and do everything they have? That's all gone, right? So what do these hyper ambitious people do? What does everybody who's displaced by this very impersonal thing that you need because you can't compete with China?
I agree with everything you're saying, except there is something else that's going on in this. While all this is going on, while all this technology is throwing people out on the street, something else is happening. The people who own that technology and the corporations who utilize that technology are becoming phenomenally richer.
Exactly.
Right? Right. And that is the issue. Which gets back.
Right, that's where the UBI kicks in, right?
Back to things like tax reform, like making sure that.
Why does the government need to be the one to do it? Who does it then? Like, I don't really understand your question. Like, who satisfies this problem when jobs are disappearing? Who else does it? The government generally and fundamentally is supposed to be a representation of the people, so that the government represents the people. So as jobs do disappear, as wages do go down, like, hey, what do you do to get like some of that job fulfillment and this and that? Like, I think it's a reasonable question.
In America, we do not have the massive
individuals. I just don't think you could have an individuals fix the problem. It's kind of silly.
Income and wealth inequality that we currently have.
But the problem with that is the taxes go to what? An incompetent, corrupt government? This is the issue.
I mean, some of our taxes are engaged with incompetence, absolutely, but not like all of it is. I'd say most of it's probably displaced or put in decent things. I'd say the bigger issues are like housing and healthcare. The fact that that's not fixed is the problem. I think that there's less of a problem with government spending money recklessly, which is, I would say, a problem, but more of a problem with them not doing anything for the money that they're getting for representation. If we haven't fixed housing and healthcare, we should have fixed these things by now. This shouldn't have been a hot take. It's because our government is being fucking dumb.
Issue that people have.
Good,
it's like,
fair enough. All right.
Willing to pay our fair. Look, I'd be more than willing to pay more taxes if we lived in a better country. I'd be like, this would be great. If I felt like if I pay more
then
taxes,
your job is,
everybody's surviving, everybody's doing well. That's great.
All right. Then that is the issue of how you revitalize American democracy. I'm not going to argue with you that the system today is pretty bad. All right, I live it. I'm going there today.
And ironically, it's bad because there's no competition, right? It's corrupt, but it's not a free market. Like the government itself has a monopoly on governing, and when they're completely corrupt, and when they're making insane amounts,
they're not completely corrupt,
of money through taxes, and they're not accountable.
No, all right, no, I don't. No, this is the way I see it.
Well, I mean, again, I think that we need more than two meaningful parties.
By the way, I'm not advocating for making it privatized, making all of government privatized.
Yeah, what's your solution then?
Talking about the realities of corruption in our current government system.
Let's talk about what we mean by corruption. I do not believe, by the way, because I know these guys, some of them are corrupt.
Let's say incompetent and waste.
Okay. All right, let's
we can take fraud out of the equation and just talk about incompetency and waste.
Is there waste? You got it. All right, but let me back it up again.
Okay.
Because I think it ties into everything else that we're talking about. You know why I believe in democracy, and why I believe, among what we didn't talk about, is we brought in some money to Vermont and elsewhere, I think, for helping workers own their own companies.
Right.
Are you familiar with that concept?
Yes.
And I meet every year with in Vermont. We're doing pretty well. And when workers own their own companies, you talk about a sense of purpose. They are more than just a cog in the machine.
Yes.
They make decisions and they feel good about it. Absenteeism is less, productivity is higher because they have a real stake in the thing.
Yes.
Okay. So I think as a nation, we should be talking about moving toward allowing workers more power, but getting back to government.
Yeah, sure, I agree with that.
Itself. The corruption is, in my view, that government is very far removed from the needs of ordinary people because it is largely controlled by billionaires in both political parties who have their agenda.
Yes.
All right. One of the things that I do, what my campaigns for president were about, what I'm doing right now, we're doing what we call a fighting oligarchy tour. That's why I'm in Texas, is to try to say to people out there who are mostly working class people, you got to get involved. I know it's hard. People are working long hours. You got to get involved in the political process. You got to make demands on government that it serves you, not just the very wealthy. So to answer your question, I think one of the goals, not only we've talked about how you deal with the exploding technology and how people gain purpose. The other thing is I want people to be able to take control over their own government. We can argue what the government should or should not do, but I don't think we can allow a handful of people with incredible wealth to control both parties.
Well, it's dangerous.
It is.
It's very dangerous, and I mean, no one the founding fathers of this country never saw that coming.
That's right.
They made this incredible system of checks and balances.
You got it.
But who could have ever possibly saw that coming?
And what I worry about Trump, is, you're right. I read it is astounding back in the 1780s when these guys wrote the Constitution how perceptive they were.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean they said
their understanding of human desires and the power and all the corruption.
Exactly.
Pretty amazing.
And they wrote that having just fought a war and won a war against the most powerful despot on earth, the King of England, right?
Right.
And I think in the back of their minds were saying, all right, we just beat the King of England, absolute power. How do you create a new country?
Maybe we need Donald Trump to get absolute power. So we'd be like, hey, guys, that was bad. Let's set ourselves up pretty well for the next couple hundred years with a really solid policy, you know?
Which has checks and balances so that nobody ever has that power.
Right.
And I got to say,
This
I mean,
is good.
one of the things, and there's a lot of arguments about Trump, that worries me very, very much is this movement toward authoritarianism. And going after media, suing media, taking away the authority that Congress has.
When you say suing media, are you talking about the CBS lawsuit?
Among other things. He has,
Right, but don't you think there's a real issue with what they did?
No.
You don't think that there's a real issue in
What exactly did they do that would warrant being sued?
editing conversations to give
Right.
someone an answer
Joe,
that's
I've been
different
on-
than what they really answered?
Joe, I've been on 8 zillion shows, right? In my life.
Okay.
Now, should I?
Talking about Kamala Harris, I mean, sure, but like also Trump got like a bunch of softball interviews. I think these are problems too. Is that what we're talking about specifically? Because they edited up a conversation that they had with Kamala. I would say that's shitty, but like, is he suing for that?
Sue you if you ask me some stupid question that I don't like, right? Or that you do something. Should I sue you?
Yeah, but that's not what he's getting.
Well, he has
suing them
sued.
for.
He has sued
What is he suing them for?
ABC. Mm-hmm. He has sued Meta.
He's suing them because they edited a conversation that they did. I mean, like, can we sue for Trump getting constant softball interviews, like the interview that he got with you? Like, how do we go? Fundamentally, it's advocation. I agree that media should exist to hold people accountable. Like, I don't think progressive media should just be a speaking, like a voice box for progressives, you know, or progressive politicians to say whatever they want and they get coverage on it and to push their narrative necessarily. But like, what's the difference between them like having a offline conversation and then editing it up in a way where like the answers are, or I would say it's deceptive in some capacity, so it makes her look good versus like giving Donald Trump the most ridiculously stupid softball fucking conversations ever. I don't understand. You know, I don't really understand like what's the difference between those two things, honestly.
Suing the Des Moines Register because of a poll that came out during the campaign that he didn't like. All right. He is suing CBS for this Kamala Harris interview. So do I think how many? I cannot tell you the number of stories done about me that were not good stories,
right?
That were dishonest stories. That's what a free press is about. You don't like it, you got to live with it. All right. You do something, I'm not going to sue you, Joe.
Right, but it's not that simple, right? Like, let's not talk about Trump, but let's talk about another candidate. Let's just imagine there's someone on the right and someone on the left, and there's a concerted effort to promote this person that's on the right. And so
that's what's happening with Trump, right?
Polls are rigged, or these are funded polls that make it look like this person on the right is winning by a substantial margin. And what this does is decreases the motivation that people have to come out and vote against them.
That's happening.
So it's fake.
By the way,
is this something that's happening with Trump? I don't
It's right
engineer. It is happening right now. And I think, is that part of...
Is that maybe? I was maybe on both sides a little bit. It's possible. But we also, like, that's something that you're thinking that might be happening. I don't think that there's any proof that that's happening. That's a speculation. And you also even... acknowledge that there are instances where people just sometimes are afraid to express themselves honestly in the way that they may vote based on like being embarrassed about the way that they vote, right? So
what he's suing them about?
No, but doesn't look.
But isn't that what he's suing them about?
Well, he's suing ABC for one thing.
But with the Des Moines Register about the poll.
Yeah,
he's suing them. From what I'm looking at, he's just suing them because the poll wasn't reflective of the way that they actually voted. So, like, did they find that they actually engaged in something shitty? Because it's possible they did. It's also possible that people feel embarrassed that they say they vote for Trump because he's a fucking embarrassing idiot. There's no evidence of any, like, malicious intent. He's just doing that because he's upset. He's just suing everybody to be a fucking idiot.
I know the polls were there.
Was the poll incorrect?
Yeah, the poll was wrong. So what?
Right.
Guess what?
But what did they know it was incorrect when they published it?
No, they published what they thought was an accurate poll. But that pollster, by the way, what's the name? I guess Seltzer polls.
I should just state for the record, I don't know this lawsuit. But
what it was about.
But I am aware that in talking to people that understand polls, that some of these are politically...
All right, but the answer is yes and no. There are polls right now doing exactly what you say.
Right.
I could doctor a poll. I could talk to more conservative, more progressive people, get the results that I kind of want, right?
And they do it to motivate people or demotivate people to vote, and it's effective.
They might. I don't know if that's a guarantee.
It has an impact. All right. On the other hand, this particular poster, that's the Des Moines Register, not a huge newspaper. I bumped into them because
Wait, is he suing a small newspaper for potentially doing this? What the fuck?
you're running Democratic primaries. Iowa is a big deal. They are a very, very respected pollster. Okay, they don't duck the polls. So they made a mistake on a poll. It turns out they had Trump doing worse than he ended up doing. Guess what? Pollsters, honest pollsters, make mistakes too.
But what is the basis of his lawsuit? Like, what is he saying in the lawsuit?
I think he is saying that gave energy to his opponents, and that it was. He's
Like
saying
He literally won. What energy did they give the opponents? I don't understand.
talked about.
like you talked
Yeah.
about, but I don't believe that's the case. There are honest pollsters who make mistakes.
But what about the other the other lawsuit with the conversation that they had with Kamala Harris, where they edited the answers that she had to make it look more precise?
60 Minutes, they were suing 60 Minutes,
Yes.
is, to my mind, historically, they've been around for a very long time. They're not infallible, but I think you look at most objective people will say 60 Minutes has a sterling reputation for investigative journalism. Are they wrong?
But that's not investigative journalism if you change someone's answers. If you ask her a question and she comes with a rambling answer that doesn't make sense, and you edit that out and insert another answer to a different question that seems more cogent.
Joe, then you're walking down, you're walking down a dangerous path. Suing media has the impact of intimidating media. All right, if somebody sues you, all right, let me finish. All right?
Okay.
Somebody sues you, why not you? You could be sued tomorrow, right? Because you are doing this. You're too sympathetic to this.
Right.
And Joe, you did that. And they have a big law firm behind you. You're going to have to spend zillions of dollars defending yourself. You know what? Next time you do an interview, you say, maybe I'm not going to go in that area. Right?
No, but it's not that. It's editing things to make deceptive editing.
Sure. Again, like, what's the difference between the Joe Rogan podcast where he gives a incredibly softball interview to Trump to make him look really good versus giving editing answers for Kamala Harris? I'm not saying it's right. I'm just like, do you sue for that? Like, if anything, that would be like public opinion. The public are like, oh, that's shitty that you guys did that. We don't like that. Maybe we'll engage with you less, or you'll lose credibility. I don't really see that as like, if you did it in a defamatory capacity where they made her look bad, or you edited Trump potentially to make him look bad, then sure, like, now we're having a different conversation because you're trying to be defamatory. But I don't really see like the need for speed. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like something that's justifiable to sue somebody over.
Joe,
so in deceptive editing, you give people a different perception of who this candidate is than reality.
Right, but you got to explain.
How far does that go? Does like every TikToker get hit for deceptive editing? You know what I mean?
But that's not objective journalism.
I know, but
that's campaign.
They didn't even edit her answer. Did they edit her? Wait, I'm just assuming that they edited her answers. I never watched the full interview versus what was put out there, so I don't know. Like, how much did they even edit? Like, was this massive problem that Joe Rogan's saying, or is he just like, did they edit a bunch of answers that she made, or is this just a claim?
For that person,
right, but
would you agree with that?
It's hard to take everything he says with credibility because he's a little bit of a conspiracy theorist.
I have those details. I don't know that.
Was it editing the answers, or was it cutting out needless rambling? Yeah, that's a good question.
I agree with your analysis of it. I don't know enough.
I think that's universally accepted that that's what they did.
Then you got to tell me why he's suing it.
Okay, you're saying that you think that it's universally accepted. That's what he did. That means that you didn't watch it. Why is Joe Rogan speaking so confidently about something that he didn't even watch? He can't even verify the information. He's like, well, that's what it's accepted that happened. Why didn't you watch it? I don't know either. I'm not sitting here saying I'm fucking perfect, but like, I'm not making strong claims about it. Like, where like he's making strong, like, this is what happened. Like, I don't really know what happened. No, this is what happened. I think that's what people are saying. Like, see how he's walking back? Is that actually what happened? He's just like saying it happened.
ABC. Why are you suing Meta?
Let's just talk about the 60 Minutes one first.
No, but it's not just
we could go to ABC, but I'm not aware of that one either.
George Stephanopoulos said something that he didn't like.
Why are you talking about it if you're not aware of it?
But the point is,
I don't understand why Joe Rogan is so confident to talk about things that he's literally, admittedly, never even looked into himself. He just takes the public opinion and runs with it in this instance. It's weird.
Stephanopoulos say.
I mean, you got to give him credit for being honest, I guess, in one hand, but like also it's just so weird.
I honestly don't remember.
Well, I think what he was saying was factually incorrect about the results of one of Trump's trials.
All right. Guess what? If I were to sue everybody who said things that were factually incorrect.
I mean, maybe that one's fair. Maybe that one might be fair if they were actually saying things that were... was George Stephanopoulos lying about it? Is this the case where they apparently settled and spent like $15 million in a defamation case? I mean, like, I can appreciate the defamation one, but it seems like he's just suing for everything at this point.
Correct about me. I'd be suing people zillions of times. But Joe, what you're saying is, look, Does media get it wrong sometimes? Absolutely. Should you have the most powerful person in America suing media? What is the impact of that? The impact is clearly intimidation. He wants to defund public broadcasting, NPR. Why is that? Well, because they also would run critical stories of him. This is part, in my view, without getting into any one case, it's part of a pattern that says, hey, I got the power. Don't you criticize me. You criticize me, I'm going to sue you. So it's not whether this show was right or wrong. There are shows every day they get it wrong. It's whether you respect you and other media people to do the best that you can. And if I don't like what you're doing, I'll go someplace else. But I don't like presidents suing media, and then it's...
I mean, I can understand that precedent being set as well, like, because the president is so powerful that them sue, like, this could be a intimidation tactic thing, but...
threatening to impeach judges who rule against you, really? Is that a concern? I think it's a concern.
I agree, that's a concern. Well, my concern is when you have media organizations that are purported to be objective, and then they say things that are defamatory and factually incorrect, and they should know that before they say it. What other course does a person have other than a lawsuit? And
I think that's fair in this, maybe in this one instance, but like, what about the other instances?
Isn't it important that you shine the light on what is a political bias
then
from an organization that you would hope would be objective?
Needless to say, I get attacked all the time by right-wing media, right? Every day.
Needless to say.
Needless to say, all right. I don't sue them. So you expose him. Then he's the president of the United States.
Do they say things factually incorrect, that are defamatory and slanderous?
If there's anybody in the world who knows how to use a microphone, his name is Donald Trump. And Donald Trump get up. You saw that program on CBS the other day? It was crap. It was wrong. And let me tell you why it was wrong.
But then they do it again and again and again.
Then you take them on.
The problem is the more people do stuff like that, if you don't have any consequences to what you're doing, you're going to continue that path. And most people only see that. They're not...
I can understand the fundamental issue if they're actually engaging in defamatory statements. So I think it's fair for Joe to say this, although he seems to be ignoring the instances where Trump is clearly just trying to bully people through lawsuits, like that one polling institution. Seems ridiculous. But I could also see the idea of like specifically maybe like wow, that's fucking cocked. Maybe like specifically politicians or the president. Like it sets a bad precedent if you could just constantly like use your money to sue the fuck out of people over and over and over again, and potentially bully, answers out of them, or bully them into maybe being more silent.
Like if you're a left-wing leaning media organization and you print something that's factually incorrect, or you say something on television that's factually incorrect, your viewers who are left-leaning are most likely not going to see Trump's rebuttal in some speech that he does in the middle of Pennsylvania.
You don't think that they would see a rebuttal from Trump? Why?
But that's another problem, and that is...
You don't think so? Maybe.
Our media is becoming very divided.
Exactly.
Okay. But all I would say is...
So you don't think that lawsuits against that are valid?
I don't think that it is appropriate for the President of the United States to be, in my view, intimidating media. Again, I get attacked. I'll be attacked tomorrow for probably things I said on the show. I'll get attacked. Then if I want to respond, I respond. I have not the President's bullet. I have a bullet. I say, you see that thing on Fox? They're wrong. And I've done it. But when Joe, you got to take it another way. I'll give you an example about CBS. We talked about corporate power. The owners of CBS is owned by Paramount, big multimedia corporation, right?
Sure.
Paramount wants to sell, wants to be sold to, what is it, Blue Sky? Does that ring a bell?
Blue Sky's that social media app.
No, and it's another one. I'm sorry. It's I always forget the name of it. Skydance. Thanks. Skydance is a large
Blue Skydance
media corporation that Paramount wants to have buy.
Okay.
To get this merger, huge merger, they have to go, guess what, to the federal government. All right? So.
By that logic, Obama should be able to sue Trump for the birth certificate shit. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. Yeah, sure. That's a good point. That's actually a great point.
You are the head of CBS.
They're constantly lying about him not being an American.
You want to sell the company, the Skydance, for many, many billions. Do you remember what was the sale? It's billions of dollars, to be sure. And you got to go to the federal government, and the president sues you. What do you think you're going to do? You're going to settle the lawsuit, give him millions of dollars, and get your merger approved. All right. So look, I
see a problem in that.
All right, and sure. I see where you're.
Yeah, that makes sense. I never even thought of it like that.
All right. So look, I
see a problem in that.
All right, and sure. I see where you're coming from. We want honesty in media, but all I can tell you is that the way to respond.
I mean, I never really thought of it like that. The president like could potentially utilize like a frivolous lawsuit just to bully you into settling, just so you can get like some kind of a merger if you want to merge.
Onto the lies, which take place every day, is to take them on, not to intimidate media. You know, we talked about the Constitution. What's the First Amendment? Is freedom of speech, right?
Right.
You're right. You're
Yes.
sitting here. You disagree with me. God bless you. Say what the hell you want to
Right.
say. All right. I'll never take that away from you.
Right.
And I'm not going to threaten you with a lawsuit. But if you start suing me, hey, Joe Rogan said this. No. Joe Rogan has this. We found out about Joe Rogan. I'm going to sue Joe Rogan for $100 million. Joe may not talk about those issues in the future. Okay? That's what I'm saying, Joe.
No, I agree with you. And listen, I'm not a fan of lawsuits either, which is why I never sued CNN.
I've never done.
CNN lied about me over and over and over again, and they said I was taking horse dewormer, and they altered the color of my face on television to make.
It's not right that they did that, but it's so funny that moment broke him so hard. Like he got framed by the media deceptively, and then he just completely broke and went like full MAGA. Fucking crazy. Like it is kind of embarrassing for him that he completely shifted because of that.
Make me look green.
I can testify, yay, green.
I didn't sue them. I'm not a fan of. My response to them was just speak out and say how ridiculous.
That's
it was
what I'm saying.
They were
Look, Joe, anybody in the public eye. You're in the public eye. I'm in the public eye. You're gonna get attacked every day, right?
Yes.
All right. That's what you're in the public eye. You don't want to be in the public eye. Put down the microphone.
Agreed.
Play
yeah.
pool. Whatever.
No,
you want
I
to do.
agree with you.
All right. So I just worry.
But I also agree that CBS shouldn't be altering a presidential candidate's
if that is the case,
interview.
I agree too. I mean, I don't know enough about it, so I'm not going to say what isn't. All I know is that 60 Minutes
Well, neither does Joe, but he's very confident in saying it, so that's fun.
is a well-respected program. Do they make mistakes?
But that's not a mistake.
All right. I don't know enough about it, so
Okay.
I can't.
I understand.
All right. What else you got for me? I should get a plane and get out of here.
You probably should. I mean, I appreciate your positions on all these different things.
And I appreciate, by the way, one of the, we talked about media and the bifurcation of media, right-wing people talk to right-wing people, left-wing people talk to left-wing people. I happen to think that the development of podcasts is a really positive step. Because I got to tell you, I've been on a million TV shows. All right, Bernie, literally you got 7 seconds to explain the issue. Well, I can't explain
It's impossible.
Nobody can.
Yeah.
And the fact that you give people a couple of hours to sit here and have a good discussion and be a good host and trade ideas, I think that improves life in America and helps people think about things. So thank you for it.
Sure. I mean, there was a nice productive conversation. Even I think that Rogan's a little fucking crazy with some of the shit that he's saying.
My pleasure. And I think that one of the things this conversation highlights is that there's a lot of issues that all Americans agree on. And this ridiculous position that we find ourselves in where you have to be ideologically opposed to one thing because your side supports the other thing, it's just terrible for all of us. And if we looked at the issues that really face our country and our citizens and our human beings that live here as a community, we agree on almost all of them. We agree that you should have a better life, that you should have healthier people, we should have healthcare and education, we should have safer streets, we should have a community that lets people do what they want to do as long as they're not harming other people.
Exactly.
And I think the divide that we have in this country accentuates the farthest ends of each end of the political spectrum, not recognize that most of us exist in the middle.
Sure.
I think we share a common humanity, and I think, look, why am I just been in this fighting oligarchy. Do you know where I was? I was to Oklahoma, one of the more conservative states in the country. I was to Louisiana, I'm here in Texas, precisely because, I mean, I think we have so much more in common, and let's focus on how we can create a better life for all of us. So,
absolutely.
All right, Joe, you're doing a great job.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks very much.
Great
Take
to see
care.
you again.
You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
All right. Cool. I mean, that was a good interview overall. I liked it.